Hello, and welcome to episode 221 of Flix and a Six, an irregularly occurring podcast about movies, beer, and pop culture tangents.
The intro's just gonna keep devolving the longer we go.
I'm one of your hosts, Anthony Costanzo. With me forever and always, the man, the myth, the prism of pork, Alessandro Biolsi. Say hello, Al.
Wouldn't you prefer a good game of chess?
No. I would much rather talk to you about movies. I like chess, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
I assumed, considering we talked this morning, that I was either going to be Meat Obelisk or Prism of Pork. I should have put odds on which one you were going to choose.
I thought about going rogue and calling you Polygonal Pork. But I liked the Prism of Pork. Pay homage to the weird ham video that we watched earlier. Ham video? On this week's episode, we've got breaking Tarantinews, Star Wars movie news, Star Wars Outlaws with a little Alex Garland garnish, and brand new breaking new of interest to you that I didn't see until now. It might be something that blows your socks off or something you saw 4 hours ago.
No, sorry, you were redundant there. That's the Tarantino.
Oh, okay. All right. The Tarantinews.
Sorry, I thought I made it clear that I was elaborating on.
Oh, no. Okay.
I was talking to you before. So.
All right. So scratch that. We already had a better name for it called Tarantinews. All before diving into our flick of the week, WarGames. Yes, WarGames. That older movie. But first, Al, what are we drinking?
We are drinking a fairly old beer.
Yes. Not as old as the movie.
Not as old as the movie. Oof. I can only imagine. So it's actually perfect timing that we happen to kind of back our way into this, because this is bent water sluice juice. As I said right before we got on, the juice is sluice.
Are we going to find a way to put that phrase in every episode going forward?
No, I was just going to say rest in whatever O.J. Simpson.
I thought this was a Juice is Loose reference to Beetlejuice from last time we recorded 6 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, but that is a reference. The sure. Beetlejuice line is a reference to O.J. Simpson when he played college football 20 years earlier.
Fair enough.
Anyway. I didn't think about that when I selected the beer. I just grabbed two beers that I knew were not from recent breweries that we did. And I let you choose which one you had. And this is the one you chose. And after I looked at it and really processed which one we did, I was like, perfect timing, because that just happened in the past week. But anyway, not done as homage, but I noticed the connection once we selected it, which is why I said rest in whatever. Bentwater Brewing Company's Sluice Juice, a New England India Pale Ale. It's a pint, which delights us, as you know. 6.5%
pints.
6.5% alcohol by volume. Once again, it's quite old. It's from Lynn, Massachusetts.
Let's maybe not read their drinking directions.
I will try to cut it off before there. With aromatics of orange, tangerine, and lime.
Tangerines.
Sluice Juice is our juicy, hazy, and smooth New England IPA. And that's definitely where the instructions and directions end.
For those keeping score at home, drink fresh as soon as possible. Canned on 10/19/21. As
I said to Anthony earlier, I bought this when it was only 4 months old, which is, I think, at a pretty appropriate amount of time. It's just that children and life and such.
It is. So. It is. Is that the time that it was born on? 1108?
It's possible.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
When they say drink fresh, they mean within minutes. I will say, let's a note on the can art for a second. Their logo, very reminiscent of Industrial Arts, probably just because of the what is that?
Well, it's the hexagonal hop. Yeah. The hexagonal hop. But
so that was me counting sides for a second. You saw that?
Yes. The art itself is very trippy. It's very
I like
it. like Adam West Batman transition card.
Yeah, it's got that going on. It's also, I like that the spiral is shiny, so it actually has a pretty neat effect.
Yeah, it stands in relief because it's matte green and then shiny gold.
I feel like we spend more time on can art than beer.
It depends on the can.
If you were to combine all of our shows, I'd love to know. You see, it's got a heart.
It depends on the can.
Yeah.
It depends on if there is some bit of beer info that you want me to expound upon.
Sure.
Also, we've done a lot of IPA, so at a certain point, there's only so many different ways to say about IPA.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's. I do have something I want you to expand. Tell me about this pint. What does that mean?
So, hundreds of years ago, in ye olde English, they came up with an absolutely bonkers system in which, instead of using a base of 10, they used a base of whatever the fuck they happened to think of at the time. Sometimes it was 8, and sometimes it was 12, and sometimes it was, my hand is about that big, and sometimes it was 16, which I suppose are all, 10 and 12, or 12 and 8 and 16 are all base 4 and 2, or multiples of that, but I don't know why. Pint.
Yeah, it's like maybe you would think that it's at first. I mean, is it just base 8 and it's pint and then quart?
Yeah, well,
but then I guess, but the cup is Well,
cup is 8. Yeah, well, for liquids, 8, 16.
Yeah, so maybe is it 24, just base 8 then?
Or 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. With respect to liquids, yes, but then you have
that's where they do it. Liquids are base 8, but
then you have feet, which is base 12.
Sure,
and then you have.
They didn't have to encode it.
they have weight, which is base 16, 16 ounces in a pound, and that's what I'm saying.
Right,
multiples of 2 and 4, right? 8 and 12 and 16.
Interesting. So the basis of their scale is 4, and then each one has a different. Wow.
And to be fair, as much as the base 10 mathematics used in the metric system is fantastic, I very much respect it.
Oh yeah.
The problem is what they chose as singular units were not always helpful, because degrees.
Yeah, Celsius is a nightmare.
Celsius, great for doing science, horrible for telling someone
I kind of love the idea of doing science.
Well, doing math and science, having an old base 10, or base out of 10 with where the scale is arranged, totally fine with it. But the problem is, when I tell someone it's going to be 26 degrees versus 24 degrees, not helpful. But if I tell you it's going to be 95 degrees or 85 degrees, helpful, because it's a usable scale. Not that the numbers themselves are useful, it's just that a degree in Fahrenheit is a difference is more useful to identify than a degree difference in Celsius.
It's still
temperature for
what is the basis of Fahrenheit though? Why I don't remember. Is there any significance to 0?
0 is freezing.
Not in Fahrenheit,
right?
It's not.
Oh, no, sorry, in Celsius. 0. No, I don't.
I
don't remember the origins, how they came up with what was what. I mean, I'm sure there is a basis. I don't know what it is.
Huh.
Considering there's negative,
I remember, obviously multiple science courses over the years of the formulas get broken out to convert, and it's just let's just not convert. Let's just use one of them because it's the fool's errand.
I'm assuming it has to do with whenever it was that they made the first thermometer, and they probably just noticing the difference in, but I don't know if it's I don't actually know what it is versus I know with pressure, right? It was inches of mercury was the first thing, so it was literally the displacement of how much volume of mercury was why, because pressure is also not, air pressure is not super useful on the surface, but I understand why they did what they did at the time, because it was easy to measure.
Sense, yeah, maybe it does. I mean,
it's not super.
The mercury
useful.
Thermometer makes sense.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if it was inches of movement or displacement of movement, by volume. I don't know what it was, but I'm sure that was what it was. They probably had the bulb at the bottom and made it 0, and then like whatever it was, they marked off maybe whether it was inches or ounces or whatever it was.
Right.
I don't remember what that was. I'm sure we can look it up, but
and then they probably had to go brought something down really cold. Yeah,
should we look it up or should we just say the world will never know?
I think we're good. If we're gonna look up anything, it's Kelvin.
If you're interested, but no, Kelvin was easy. It's just Celsius, but they scaled it to 0 being absolute 0 versus having negative 273. It's the exact same scale. It's just shifted to make the math
shifted down. Okay, that makes sense. I'm down with that. What? How did we get here? Pints. So I asked about pints.
You said you wanted to talk more about beer, and instead
Tell me more about
we talked a lot more about math and measurement.
I think we should taste the beer.
I was wafting it before you asked me about pints.
It's surprisingly fresh smelling for something this old.
It is. Packs a punch.
I'm pretty excited. I'm definitely got that tangerine on there. Maybe some Vaseline. Yeah. Read about it in a magazine. All right, cheers.
Oh, there we go. There's a little click.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. That's old and delicious.
Surprisingly, doesn't taste old.
Not at all. It actually tastes very fresh to me.
Yeah.
I imagine what it tasted like at 11:09 on the day that it was.
I really hope that was the time. Like, I'm picturing like coroner report, like time of death. It's time of canning 11:08. Okay, mark it.
This is really good. It's just like it's got also a nice it's not bad. Like it's noticeably more, I feel like, carbonation, but not in a bad way. Like I like the effervescence of it. I think it's really good. I think
most IPAs should be, especially like fruity or floral IPAs, should have a little bit of punch behind it.
I agree. I notice it more than I usually do.
Yeah, no, tasty though. I definitely drank a couple of these fresh-ish. I don't remember what my call was at that time, but I remember liking it.
Yeah,
it's good beer.
I'm about this. 3 trace knuckles.
I could do 3. You could.
I do 3. I'm gonna do 3. Put me down for 3.
Not that we keep track of this anywhere, but
that's true. Oh yeah, I should probably start writing those down. I have a little table now that I put together for the.
I was doing it Untapped for a while, and then the hiatus.
Oh yeah, that was cool. That made sense.
The hiatuses threw me off, and I didn't keep up with it. So,
did we have a Spin Tune Untapped account, or was it Flix and a 6?
It was. I think it was just Flix and a 6.
Okay, maybe we start a Spin Tune Untapped account and then just get on the horse again.
Well, but I have like probably 75 or 100 or something on there.
Fair. It'll have a gap in history, just like our shows.
Well, it would just require me going back and listening to the first 15 minutes of every episode. I
think we just move on. I think we just start now. Pretend like it never happened.
I haven't been on Untapped in a couple of years, so
every once in a while, I find myself on Untapped when I'm at that. Remember that liquor store that I brought you to by my house?
Mm-hmm.
With all of you.
I forget. It was like a month ago.
We went to that. That was a different one. We went to.
You said the one by my house. So I took you to. I was like, yeah, we just went to one like a month ago.
The good one with all the beer. The last time you were here, before that, probably we went there. It has like a lot of selections.
Okay.
But
would that have been
one of the things that I noticed?
Would that have been Oscars of last year?
Maybe it's possible. One of the things that I noticed at that place is that there's so many beers that have 0 information on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really irritating to me.
Which is why I appreciate when they have some information. I always make a note of it when we talk about it on the beer because I like it. I like more. Sometimes when you get a really good
about it on the beer.
Yep. Like, I literally look at the can and say, "Hey, look, there it is. It's on the beer."
Yeah.
I appreciate when I get those ones that come with a 6-pack or like a 12-pack box or whatever, and there's information on the can
box.
Or bottle, and there's also the one on the box, and sometimes they're overlapping, but sometimes they're supporting.
They should put that on the box. But it does drive me crazy though, the ones that have nothing, and that's what I leverage Untapped for. Occasionally, like I'll pull it out in that store to be like, what is this beer? And at that point, I am judging based on the label because there's nothing else for me to go on. Sometimes it doesn't even tell me what kind of beer it is, which I find irritating.
To me, there's like a level of care that me as like a drinker, if you're going to drink like good beer, like if you just want to buy a generic like commercial beer, fine. If you enjoy it, great. But if you want something more, don't you want to know a little bit about it before you've bought it? Like, do you think that you're cultivating an air of mystery? And if so, write something clever and pithy and mysterious on there. Even if you're not going to give me the information, give me something to be intrigued, to find out more. If you even wrote a blurb on there, we're not going to tell you what type of beer this is. We're not going to tell you what's in it. We're not going to tell you X, Y, and Z of it. You're going to have to drink it to find out. If you wrote that, color me intrigued. I just might. But if you just totally bland and nothing on there, it's like, well, if you don't care enough, then why should I care?
You're preaching to the choir, man.
I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but I kind of stand by that.
No, it's true. I mean, the part of the reason I don't drink a lot of beer. I drink a beer a week on this show. Well, a beer occasionally on the show, and maybe sometimes on the weekend I'll have one, but like lately my beer consumption has gone down tremendously.
Me too.
And I will like I like a beer out. If we're going to like a pub or something, like Maloney's, obviously, with all of their beers on tap. I like a nice fresh beer on tap. That's great. I like going to a tap house. That's awesome. Or like one of the breweries nearby. Love it. We don't do it often, but that's when I have them. So I think that's part of the reason. It's like when I have it, I want something that I know I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah.
I've also been like very much like I will fully pour a beer out now if it's not exactly what I want, because like I'm not going to waste the one beer that I'm going to drink on something that is not what I want it to be. And I'm okay with pouring it out and having tried it, but I'd rather know what I'm buying and know if there's a chance that I'm going to like it. And that's why I need you to tell me what kind of hops or something, because like I might be interested in trying something I've never had, or grabbing one that I know I like a specific type of hops that's in it, or maybe avoiding ones that I know I don't like.
So when you order a beer you haven't had before at the bar and you don't like it, you just pour it out on the bar, or
right on the bar? I've been fortunate enough to. I feel like the place that I go to, Maloney's, which I think we went maybe once or twice.
Oh, we went once, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. They have all the descriptions. They tell you everything that's in there. It's usually no surprise. I pick one I enjoy. I end up enjoying it. They notice if you're not thrilled with it, and they give you something else, which is really cool. Like they're like not feeling that one, and you should say no, not really, and they will be like, great, pick a different one, because they have 100 beers on tap and they don't care.
I'm just picturing them pouring you a beer and putting it down, and then like getting into a bit of a crouch with like their hands on the bar and like their chin resting above it. They're just like staring at your face and they're evaluating. Okay, good. Yeah. Or like just looking crestfallen when you look like you don't like it.
Well, so it's funny. The other day we went out for dinner for the first time as a family of 4, so that was fun. We had Ian in the car seat on the table and Elio in the booth with us. It was great.
On the table.
Yeah, it was great. Ian fell asleep. It was awesome. That Elio eats so much food.
Same.
Yeah, same. But anyway, we were there. We each ordered a beer. Elio. Yep. Elio did try both beers. He likes to put his finger in it and try it. Especially the ones, like I like. He likes the ones that I usually order, and Kim usually orders sour beers, and he likes sour stuff. So it was.
He also likes a finger dip of margarita, I believe.
He does. Well, no, it was I made him his own little margarita without the margarita.
Well, no, there was a dip and then a virgin margarita that followed it.
That's right. But it was interesting. So Kim ordered one. It was kind of like a smoothie sour. It was a little thicker. But they come by and they give, they put mine down and they're like, I'm really sorry. It was the end of the keg for the sour. So like, just this one's on us. And then, if you want something else, just let us know. And Kim was like, okay. And they put the glass down and it's like almost the full glass. So it's like, you really like, they want you to enjoy the beers.
Well, because every once in a while they say that and it's like 2/3 foam and 1/3 beer. And it's like, okay, fair. Yeah. But like, there is, of all the first world problems, there are very few worse first world problems than seeing a big menu, seeing something that you are really excited to try
Yeah.
or have because you haven't had it in forever, and then coming back with the "I'm so sorry," as if like you just found out that like someone that you love like died in the hospital. It's like the doctor coming to you. I'm like, I'm sorry,
we did all we could.
We did all we could. It's like, I'm so sorry, the keg just tapped. Like
we did all we could. They slide the half of a glass over to you. My condolences.
But I'm just picturing them like running the taps or something like that, like 2 taps, like.
This is so stupid.
You wanted more beer talk. Here is more.
We've gone way far off the rails, and I'm going to bring it right back because it's. I mean, you're Trace Knuckles. I'm Trace Knuckles. We're good with this beer. It's delicious. Get yourself a Bent Water Brewing Co. Sluice juice. Let's get into some news and nuggets. I'd like to know about the Breaking Tarantino because I don't actually know what you're talking about.
Okay, so I had opened up Deadline for a story that will be in a future new coming to a podcast segment near you. And at the top of the banner was breaking news on their own website. And it says, if I can find the banner, breaking news, Quentin Tarantino scraps the movie critic as his final film. So that I don't know if you recall that detail, but he announced that his final film, because he said he was going to do 10 movies, was going to be called The Movie Critic.
And he's scrapping that movie or saying that he's going to do more movies?
No, he's scrapping that movie.
Got it.
Quentin Tarantino's movies are always full of surprises, and here is one about The Movie Critic we did not expect. Deadline can reveal that Tarantino has dropped the film as his 10th and final project. He simply changed his mind, Deadline has been told. Tarantino was going to have Brad Pitt as the principal star, which would have marked their third teaming after Inglourious Basterds and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There were rumors that many from the cast of his past films might take part, and Sony was preparing to make the film after doing such a superb job on the last one. Word is that Tarantino had rewritten his script, which delayed the start of production, but this is his 10th and final film, and Tarantino simply decided that The Movie Critic will not be it. This is the biggest surprise to Tarantino fans since years back when Deadline revealed that he had shelved The Hateful Eight after he gave a small group of actors his script and one of them shared it with their rep. Soon it had been copied and the rough draft was shared all over town and online. Tarantino felt betrayed, but he eventually returned to the project after staging a reading for charity and drawing raves for it. As for The Movie Critic, originally planned to be his 10th and final film, Tarantino has simply had a change of heart, and Deadline hears he will not be moving forward with the project. Sources close to the director said he changed his mind and is going back to the drawing board to figure out what his final film will be.
I don't really care about this story. Only because...
Well, I know you're a big Tarantino fan, so I figured you might like to know about this because it seems to have just broken within the past hour or two.
I paid no attention to it until the movie's in front of me. And then even that, like there's still some that I haven't seen. Which I enjoy every one that I've watched for sure. But it's like he's a little bit weird, a lot of it weird, and I don't know what is his arbitrary 10 movie limit. I don't know. It's just one that he
set for himself, I guess, for whatever reason.
I feel like that would be the reason why he would scrap the movie, is if like now he has like in his mind like the pressure of this being my final movie and it's not good enough. Like,
well, that's part of it, but I mean, it sounds like this is as personal as the last one was to him, because I actually had no idea what this movie was supposed to be about. So apparently earlier this year, last year after the strike ended, he was talking about it, and this is some detail. He said, at the time his movie was set in California, the year of that film's release, which was 1977, and that it is, quote, based on a guy who really lived but was never really famous, and he used to write movie reviews for a porno rag. The inspiration goes back to a job Tarantino had as a teen, loading porn magazines into a vending machine and emptying quarters out of the cash dispenser. Quote, all the other stuff was too skanky to read, but then there was this porno rag that had a really interesting movie page. There was one critic in particular Tarantino liked who wrote snarky and smart as the second string critic.
That's kind of funny as a plot or a rough plot.
It's certainly a unique one.
Yeah. That's interesting, I guess. So he will do another one at some point, potentially, and we'll see what that is whenever that comes to be. Am I crazy? Wasn't there like a plan or always a plan to do a Kill Bill 2?
I thought that what he did with those two, which I guess is technically one movie, was all that he was doing. I wasn't aware, or maybe I forgot about it, but I know that he was supposed to do a Star Trek movie, and that got scrapped entirely.
Weird.
Yeah, like 5 years ago, it had sounded like he was going to do that between, like he was considering changing his whole 10 movie thing and was going to do that between Once Upon a Time and his planned last one, and it never materialized for whatever reason.
Interesting.
Like he was viewing that as not part of his 10, quote unquote, because he was doing like a project with like a franchise, you know what I mean?
Yeah, finding a way out of it. That's fair.
Or that. So maybe at this point, this is almost George R. R. Martin-esque, where it's like he doesn't know how to finish. Like the ending isn't good enough for him, so he's just delaying the ending. That's
fair. I'll tell you, I have a good ending for Game of Thrones, but whatever. It's fine. I think from what I remember, the Kill Bill 2 thing, like the idea was like enough time would elapse. Like he had other projects that he wanted to do, and enough time would elapse that I guess it's Black Mamba's daughter would be old enough to play the adult version of herself. And
I mean, that was the whole thing, right? She says to her, if you ever grow up and still feel some way about it.
Right. So I thought that was a thing that was like potentially planned, and then I haven't heard anything about it since. So maybe it was just an idea. I don't know.
It's possible. I don't recall hearing about that.
I kind of want to just watch Inglourious Bastards again.
One of these years, I'll finally sit down and watch it.
I mean, it's a good one we could do. I think you'll enjoy it. That would be one that's fun to do for the show, and I also want to rewatch it, and that would give me a reason to do it. So maybe we'll get that on the books.
And you wanted to do it for the show would give me a reason to finally sit down and do it. Because it's one of those things where it's always like, I mean, eventually I'll watch it, but like it came out like 15 years ago, and eventually it can come. It's
just like, I know you can appreciate Christoph Waltz, but
yeah, I mean, I saw the first sequence, and he was great. Even
I was gonna say, that's the movie. You watch him in that, and you're like, oh my god, it's just devious, and I love it. That and the scene in Django when he says "couldn't resist." I both those things are incredible. It's funny. I like Tarantino's movies. I think he's a little bizarre. But what I love about his movies is what all of those actors do in his movies. And I know that has a lot to do with the direction. That's the whole thing, right? He directs them on how to, but they bring the actors that he brings in, they just do so much great stuff, and they so clearly seem to be having a good time.
Yeah.
That I just love it. Those are fun to watch. Star Wars movie news.
Okay, this is, I think, a pretty interesting one. I don't know if you've already seen anything about this, but
probably not.
I was interested. Now this news is a little old now. It was about 2 weeks ago. Not quite 2 weeks ago. This was on the Hollywood Reporter. Star Wars: Beau Willimon to co-write James Mangold's movie. The feature will delve into the origins of the Force. Beau Willimon is going from House of Cards to House of Jedi. The playwright and screenwriter has been tapped to work the script for Star Wars: Dawn of the Jedi, Lucasfilm's feature that is to be directed by James Mangold. Willimon is joining Mangold to write the script for the project that will trace the origins of the Force and be set 25,000 years before any of the timelines and stories told by the movies and shows so far. Dawn of the Jedi, which is a working title, was first unveiled almost exactly 1 year ago at the last Star Wars celebration held in London in April 2023. When I first started talking to Kathy Kennedy about doing one of these pictures, what occurred to me was thinking about what kind of genre of movie within Star Wars I wanted to do, Mangold said. And I thought about a biblical epic, like a 10 Commandments about the dawning of the Force. Where did the Force come from? When did we discover it? And when did we learn how to use it? The project, like most Star Wars initiatives, had been under a Sith shroud of secrecy ever since. The feature has no release date, but Mangold is expected to turn his attention to Dawn of the Jedi after he wraps A Complete Unknown, his Bob Dylan biopic that stars Timothée Chalamet, being made by Disney arm Searchlight Pictures. The next Star Wars movie is slated to be The Mandalorian and Grogu, which on Friday received a May 22nd, 2026 release date. This is the part that I found interesting, because I don't think I was aware of this, or at least never made the connection. Dawn of the Jedi is not Willimon's first time in hyperspace. The scribe worked on season 1 of Andor, the acclaimed and Emmy-nominated Star Wars series focused on the character played by Diego Luna. Williman wrote 3 episodes, including the prison breakout installment titled One Way Out. The episode earned Williman an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Writing for a drama series and featured the heartbreaking line, "I can't swim," uttered by...
I got chills with you just saying it again.
So apparently he wrote that whole 3-episode arc, the whole prison arc, which is the absolute...
This movie's going to be good.
That's why this news was so exciting to me. Mangold's a good director. I don't think every single movie he's made is great, but he's made some pretty good movies.
Sure.
Logan was good. I know some people like the Wolverine?
Yeah.
I didn't love it. I never saw the whole thing, but I know
it's been a long time since I've seen that one.
Some people really liked that one. Ford vs. Ferrari was great.
I love that that'll never die.
I know, I'll never stop doing it. But then Indiana Jones was just okay. So, he's been all over the place, but
yeah,
he is capable of making very good movies. It seems like he's excited for this project. Bo Williman is a fantastic writer. I mean, House of Cards, the first few seasons was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. We talked about it a bunch on the show. So,
I'm gonna look him up real quick. There's something else that I'm thinking of that he did.
Probably.
I feel like that I can't.
Oh, here, there's a little bit of thing here. He's known for his dramatic prowess.
310 to Yuma. That's what I watched fairly recently that I really liked.
Wasn't that? No, sorry, that wasn't the one I was thinking of. There was that other Western movie that I mentioned that I had seen. I don't remember what it's called now. The one with Ed Harris. You did mention 310 to Yuma, that didn't you?
Yeah, he did that. That's a good movie. But there's I think that he would he would work well with Bo Williman. I feel like the Bo Williman's writing based on that 3-episode arc and like his and Mangold's ability to do kind of like a that's got a decent amount of action in the movies, but it's more like a garnish, and there's like good storytelling and characters in them. I think that it would work really well. And
this is the first time that we've gotten more than just the 30-second elevator pitch. Like, we've got a little bit more of what he's actually envisioning. The idea of doing one of those old school epic. Now, I don't think he's going to get away with doing a 4-hour movie like the 10 Commandments was, but
sure,
a movie inspired by those old school Cecil B. DeMille and all those sorts of epic.
4 hours long. It's released on Disney Plus, and the lead doesn't blink.
But doing something like that would be just so different than so many of the other projects. In the way that we've talked about, when Marvel movies don't make a Marvel movie, they make an X movie that happens to be a Marvel movie, or a Y movie that happens to be. If they make a quote-unquote biblical epic style movie that is a Star Wars movie, I'm excited to see what that could look like.
Yeah, same.
Not that I don't love just making a Star Wars. We love Star Wars. But I am intrigued by, we have this huge canvas that we could work with.
Right.
We can keep making, let's call it, for lack of a better term, Skywalker Saga movies. And I will still love to watch them. But in addition to that, we can also do these things too. And I'm excited for that as well. We can have Ahsoka, and we can also have Andor. We can have Episode 10. We can also have the 10 Jedi Commandments.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I'm all for it. Yeah, I'd love to see what they do. I do wonder if the failure to launch on some of this older timeline stuff.
Could you imagine Matthew McConaughey in a Star Wars?
Yes. I wonder if some of it has to do with worrying about getting off on the right foot, or maybe behind the scenes they are planning out points in time and figuring out how they would tie into those, and then making that kind of similar to the Marvel thing, right? Where it's we're gonna hit X, Y, and Z, and let the directors and writers play with the characters in between there, so long as those paths eventually hit the dots on that. What are those connected dot? Yeah, connected dot drawings that we're doing.
Yeah.
I feel maybe that's what they're doing.
I think there was a crisis of faith and a crisis of confidence amongst the people making the Star Wars and the people watching the Star Wars.
Mm.
And then there was a pandemic. And then there was a strike. And so we've had a really long time where there was only certain things they were willing to do. And they were trying to figure out, what do we want to make? What do our fans want us to make? How do we make those things? Who do we make them with? Like, they had to go back to the drawing board. It sounds like, whether they are right or wrong, they've made decisions finally.
Mm-hmm.
There was 18 months there where it seems like there weren't even a lot of decisions being made, let alone things being outside of a couple of shows, because it was lower budget and all that stuff.
Instead of churning out a billion Marvel projects, they should have slowed that down a little bit and poured some resource into Star Wars.
I mean, they've slowed that down too. Like, what's the next Marvel movie that's coming out?
I don't remember. Because at this point I've kind of lost interest.
Sure, but my point is, like, I haven't watched the last one that came out.
What was the last one? The Marvels.
The Marvels.
Yeah, I didn't see that one yet either.
I still haven't sat down to watch it yet. But
we could have done a new adjacent movie, and we're doing WarGames. That's what they've done to us.
Not just that, though. Every step along the way, I've always known what was the next movie coming out.
Yep.
I don't know what's next.
I don't either.
And part of that is because they don't think they have one even on the slate for this year, do they?
I don't know. I'm going to look it up.
I know they have a bunch that are, like, in pre-production or production. I don't know that they have anything in post-production.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
Okay. And, like, that's...
Captain America Brave New World, and then Thunderbolts.
Captain America Brave New World is kind of the answer I'm looking for on this. Like, that's... Because, like, I've seen, like, set photos and stuff like that. That is... But is that supposed to come out this year?
25. The only one this year is Deadpool.
And that's what I'm saying is, like, and that's almost... They're almost doing that because the fans are making them do it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even think they want to do that movie.
Yeah.
It's not really part of the MCU. I'm sure they'll tie it to it some way, but that's
it would be pretty incredible if they tied all of the missteps of the past few years and just wiped them out with the movie.
I mean, clearly it's part of it, right? Because they have
a bad, like, Ryan Reynolds dream. Like, it would be, that would really be, I would applaud that. Like, if we screwed up. Like, it hasn't been great. Let's just ignore these 6 or whatever it is.
They have the time cups in it, right? What is it?
Yes.
TVA? Is that what
TVA,
they are?
Yep.
They're in it.
Yep.
But, like, in similar fashion to, like, they're, like, 18 months behind the Star Wars curve on this. They have their shows going. The movies have ground to a halt for a variety of reasons. A lot of the same reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Going back to the Star Wars, the positives, I'm really excited for what that could be. And I'm happy to be patient knowing that something's presumably happening. That's nice.
Yeah.
Can't wait for a movie. I'd love to get back to the movies.
Sure. Absolutely. You can't have Star Wars without having movies. You can have the games and the books and the shows. They're all great. Or at least the idea of them are all great. Mm. But you need movies as part of the portfolio. You do. Yeah.
Speaking of the games, Star Wars Outlaws released a story trailer.
Sometime last week, yes.
Story-ish trailer. I feel like there wasn't... I feel like I watched it and I don't remember what the story points are.
The first, whatever it was, 15 or 30 seconds was the story part. The rest of it was just a bunch of sizzle.
Okay.
But the thing was, it started with this big, like, narration by some crime lord, and it was a bunch of criminals gathering together.
Everything's in shambles, so let's loot. Yeah,
exactly. Let's create a. Well, you've still never watched The Wire, right? It kind of reminded me of the groupings of the drug kingpins who, like, they would come together, or like a meetings of the Five Families in The Godfather or Sopranos, like that sort of situation. But it was almost like, felt like it was kind of like they were going to be below the line of the major syndicates. Like, these were the people who were going to try and attack the market inefficiencies of where, like, the Pikes and Crimson Dawn and all of them are, like, not quite living up to. because the one bit I know is that part of it is like there's going to be a reputation thing in this game where like if you piss off the Pikes, like they're going to try and kill you type of thing, and like the way you tackle missions and stuff like that will choose whether your reputation goes up or down or stays neutral or whatever with them. If you can get over on one without them finding out, you won't lose reputation, but if you do, they'll be hunting you type of thing. So
sure,
you're a criminal and you're going to do criminal things. And
it's the entire game is based on the concept of The Force Awakens when Han Solo was standing on the ship.
Tell me the second time.
Trying to talk down the two. I mean, great scene, by the way. And I love the idea of kind of building a game around that concept. But yeah, that's cool. I don't really even need to see more. Like, it's a relatively good looking Star Wars game. I'm going to buy it and play it.
I would like to see the gameplay just to like get a feel for what we're going to be doing.
Yeah. I know they showed gameplay in the last one. Yeah. The last trailer.
Well, there's only been 2 trailers, right? The first like announcement trailer, and then actually it wasn't even like a trailer at that point. It was like,
is there a date for it?
Yeah, it's a couple of months from now. I don't remember exactly when. June?
It is September? August 30th.
Okay.
But
there was a date. I just forgot.
I mean, I'm excited to play it, especially after the fact that I don't know, Jedi Survivor left me just so excited about Star Wars. Like, Star Wars games right now have been the highlight of the Star Wars universe.
Star Wars games are having a moment.
Yeah. I'd also like to point out that in 24 we're getting a Star Wars game and an Indiana Jones game, which is pretty exciting.
What year is it?
That'll be cool. Yeah, it looks fun. I like the idea. It was funny. I was listening to what was it? GameScoop? I actually think they even I just realized I'm looking at the page that shows Indiana Jones coming up, but I actually think that they made a similar comment about like the fact that Indiana Jones game is coming out this year as well. And but they were talking. They had mentioned this game, and they were talking a little bit about it. And then one of the folks on the show is like, it's like, but it's in the time period we know. Yes, it's like it's a small character living in the world, and it's dealing with like something that's relatively unexplored, like the shambles of like, basically all these syndicates and like how they can kind of do what they want in this moment. There's a lot bigger things going on, so it's everything's kind of in chaos. So that is interesting to explore. But the question that he had was like, but are they going to do it? Like at some point, are you going to hear a lightsaber turn on? Like he's like, it doesn't. He's like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like they could just stick with like grounding in this portion of it, which I think for something like this,
I think it's supposed to take place like between 4 and 5, or between 5 and 6, something like that. I don't think it's pre-4. I think it's during.
It's 5 and 6.
Okay,
I think, if I remember correctly, because I think there's a. Did they show Han Solo in Carbonite?
I don't remember, but I remember specifically
because they showed Jabba's palace.
Okay, they specifically mention in one of the text things I've read, whether it was during the announcement or during this one, that it takes place during the original trilogy's timeline. I just couldn't remember exactly when.
Let me see if I could. Yeah, between episode 5 and 6. Oh, fans may be disappointed by the absence of Han Solo, who is frozen in carbonite during that time. But who cares? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I'm interested. I'm excited to play it.
Remember, there's those 2 years where Lando's wearing Han's clothes for some reason.
Sure. Now, the only thing, who's making this?
Ubisoft.
I'm not sure where I stand with Ubisoft games.
It's funny because when that trailer came out last week, I was looking at the comments underneath it, and just a litany of don't pre-order Ubisoft games, don't pre-order Ubisoft games, don't pre-order Ubisoft. I was like, okay, I guess they've got a reputation. And I do vaguely recall hearing something about that at some time or other, but Brian would be the person to ask about this, not me.
Yeah, and I do know there's some Ubisoft games that he is a big fan of. I'll have to...
They have made some classic games. I'm sure they've made a lot of crap as well. I think we talked about it last year, the year before, whatever. They made that Guardians game, right? I liked that game a lot.
The Guardians of the Galaxy game?
Yeah, didn't they?
I don't think so. I think that Square?
No, because that's what we talked about. It was because I was confusing Square and Ubisoft because Square is like PlayStation exclusive. And I was saying that I made an association with Ubisoft with PlayStation for some reason as well.
Guardians of the Galaxy developer addresses Square Enix sales expectations.
Or fuck. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
I thought it was Ubisoft. I forgot.
Developer, Marvel Entertainment in Eidos, Montreal. Where's the publisher? Publisher? Not listed. Weird. Thanks for nothing, Google. Originally published by Square Enix.
Okay. Then my recollection.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what originally published by means. Like, did it get published by somebody else later? It hasn't been that long. But developed by Eidos Montreal, so that's something.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, Star Wars Outlaws. I'm looking forward to it. I'll play it. We'll see how it goes. There's still a lot of games I need to get back to. Hogwarts Legacy, for example. Never finished that. Would love to get back to that. I'm afraid that I'm too far gone at this point and would have to start over. I hope that's not the case. I don't remember how to play the game.
Oh, I mean, the gameplay itself is pretty simple.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
All right, so maybe I could just pick it back up. I do.
I think
Brian's got me itching to play Mass Effect with all this
man.
commentary between us on the group chat.
It's funny because, like, you know, he messaged us like a month ago. It was like, I finished Mass Effect 1, or about to finish Mass Effect 1. He goes, I love this game. And I was like, I've been only saying for like years, man. Like,
he's like, why did nobody tell me?
I was like, no one could have told you more than I did.
That's right.
And then me and him text a little bit about it like a couple days later, like about the turn from 1 to 2. Like, he was like, oh, maybe I'll start it next week. And then, like, he's like, I started it like 2 days later. And so we were talking about it a little bit right at the beginning or whatever. And then I hadn't spoken to him in a few weeks. And then all of a sudden he texted us the other day, I'm pretty sure I'm almost done with 2, and I don't want it to end. And I'm like, this is what I'm trying to say. This is what I've been saying to the people. I'm sure you can find a sale on Mass Effect Legendary Edition if you've never tried before. If you enjoy video games, it's to the audience, not to you.
Yeah,
enjoy video games.
I definitely have it.
You've heard me talk about it for years. Give it a try, man.
No.
Or woman, whoever. It doesn't matter. Give it a try. But and you know, you could call me, you could text me, you could Skype me, telegraph me, you could do it in person.
Telegraph.
You know, whatever community. Smoke signals, I don't care. I mean, you know, you gotta mix it up. I know your game time is limited. You know, you find your windows and
more on that when we get to consumption. But let's get into the Alex Garland garnish. What do we got here?
The Alex Garlish?
Yeah. Garlish.
Well, I was trying to put Garland and garnish into one, you know. So obviously Civil War came out about a week ago or whatever. Yeah, within the past week. I have not had the chance to see it. I wanted to try to make time to go see it Friday night when it came out. Wasn't going to happen. I was occupied Saturday and I was not in the mood to go to the movies on Sunday. So I would like to see it in the next couple of weeks. I'd like to do it for the show. I don't know if you'll be able to get to see it in the next couple of weeks. Also, another movie coming out this week that I also want to see, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And that one I know my brother and my dad want to go see. New guy Ritchie.
I mean, I could have guessed that by the title, but I haven't heard of it. Ministry of
Ungentlemanly Warfare. I think it's a World War II movie.
Okay. Big fan of Henry Cavill these days. Remember there was a time. There was. Hashtag where we tried to hammer Cavill. And then Cavill's gavels.
That's right.
Took over. Yeah, I like him. I swear to God, is that? No, it's not. Okay. I thought it was who don't I like? Help me out here.
Michael Shannon?
That's what I thought it was for a second. Nah, he's fine now. He's fine. But yeah, that looks interesting.
But anyway, back on topic of the Garlish.
The Garlish.
So I came across, like 2 weeks ago, a couple of different... There's a bunch of news stories coming out. In anticipation of Civil War coming out. So I'm going to just scroll to one particular portion of this article. It was an article in The Guardian. It was a deep dive interview with Alex Garland when he was like on set or in post-production of Civil War. Apparently he's not going to direct anymore after this.
Oh.
He said that even before this came out. I only scrolled through this very quickly, so I'm going to read you some snippets. We're gonna come across it together here. It seems fair to say that everything's been going swimmingly in Garland's career for nearly 3 decades. In addition to the feature films, there have been video games and the Silicon Valley sci-fi TV series devs. That's why when I read an interview conducted during Civil War shoot in which he declared his intention to give up directing and retreat to only writing, I assumed they must have caught him on a bad day. Here now, surrounded by framed posters of his past triumphs and with his latest opus ready for release, does he still feel the same? Nothing has changed. I'm in a very similar state. I'm not planning to direct again in the foreseeable future. It often happens that acclaimed indie directors rise in industry status only to discover that with bigger budgets come greater creative restrictions. But Garland, who is full of praise for A24, says that isn't it. The pressure doesn't come from the money. And just parenthetically here, the budget for this was about $50 million, which is by far the biggest budget of an A24 movie to date.
Okay.
It comes from the fact that you're asking people to trust something that, on the face of it, doesn't look very trustworthy. He gives as an example, sitting in a car park outside of Atlanta, asking his Civil War cast to believe that one day the VFX blue screen behind them will be a night sky lit up by a mortar fire. Or on Ex Machina, where Alicia Vikander and Sonoya Mizuno are trusting that nudity is going to be dealt with thoughtfully and respectfully, when cinema leads towards not doing that. This is the deep sense of responsibility to cast and crew that, quote, literally keeps me awake at night. He's less burdened by the controversies that have been swirling around Civil War since long before anyone had actually seen it. Namely, that it is reckless, or at least in poor taste, to release such a film at a time in American history when insurrectionary violence seems like a realistic possibility. You needn't spend long with Garland to realize the injustice of that accusation. He's always considered in his responses, typically offering up several alternative answers to a single question, and then self-reflexively evaluating the relative accuracy of each. Quote, now I could then give another answer, which would be a post-rationalized sort of answer, but I'm not sure if it'd be true, followed by an ellipsis, showing the form of which he gives responses to things. He can now also expound at length on how sensationalized violence became coded into the grammar of film. A plausible theory involving Second World War veteran filmmakers and the use of squibs, which are exploding blood capsules, I guess that's the term they use, in 1967 crime classic Bonnie and Clyde, and then goes into detail on the technical ways in which Civil War shootouts subvert this grammar. There's no cable snapping someone backward and a big fountain of blood flying up a wall, he says. Instead, as more often happens in real life, people who've been shot simply fall over. What I think, or hope, that does is slightly reframes the violent action in audiences' minds. He began work on Civil War around 2018, observing the world and, quote, feeling surprised that there wasn't more civil disobedience going on. Since those years saw protests over a range of issues, pro-Trump, anti-Trump, gun control, climate change, and Brexit, to name a few, I asked what specifically he was surprised that people weren't marching in the streets about. This provokes a look of ferocious incredulity. Is that a real question? I mean, are you kidding? There were a holistic set of problems globally, not least in the country where I live in the UK, or in the country I've been working in, the US. There's a lot to be very concerned about. In any case, he then set aside the unfinished screenplay for a few years until in 2020 things got even worse. Garland contracted COVID early on in the pandemic and was quite sick for a while, resulting in a time jump sensation reminiscent of the opening scenes of 28 Days Later. I came out of it into a world that was a state of real agitation. All sorts of fractures were becoming more fractured and paranoid concerns becoming more paranoid. He wrote 2 screenplays back-to-back, Civil War first, then Men, which I haven't seen. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, no.
And the process has varied into it. Anxieties took the shape of one underlying concern. It's polarization. You could see that everywhere, and you could see it getting magnified. So I could keep reading this if we want. There is a bunch more here, but I thought that this was interesting. He's not giving up movies. He's going to continue writing movies, but he is giving up directing them, I think, at this point. I mean, if you hear when he announces a project or takes on a project, he always sounds super excited. And when the movie or show comes out, no matter the response or the money it makes or doesn't make, he sounds exhausted.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think he loves the making of the movies and hates the physical making of the movies.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I kind of respect that. Recognizing that in yourself and wanting to focus on like the thing that you do like about it. Like I remember years ago, there were a handful of different types of careers that I was interested in before I went to college and figuring out like what I wanted to do. And I thought about going to culinary school. Obviously, I have a background in working at the pizzeria and cooking. And I was like, well, I can always, I know how to cook. I'm happy with my skill level of cooking. I can always sharpen that as I go. I don't necessarily need to do that as a career. And also, my dad kind of warned me against it, like warned me about it because he did it his whole life, and it's a lot. Yeah. So I ultimately decided not that. I was at one point interested in the FBI, but that was kind of a fleeting thing. I was very interested in cinematography, and I was curious to go to film school. And the other option was computer science. I enjoyed working with computers in general. I wanted to see what, and I had to make a decision. And I ultimately went with computer science. And it was because movies have always been like pure entertainment for me and a nice escape. And I was worried about the concept of like, what if like getting into it
ruined it for you?
Ruined it. And like, I wouldn't be able to like, it's such a pure thing for me. Like I love watching a movie like that. I feel like if I somehow manage to, I don't know, break that.
Well, it's that old expression, right? You don't want to know how the sausage is made, right?
But the thing is, I kind of also know a lot about the dark parts too. Mm-hmm. I think the experience, it's not even so much knowing about it, but I think like actually experiencing it would potentially make it so much worse. And then,
sure.
And you know, yeah, I don't know, just ruin that thing that is so, I don't know, so wonderful in my eyes right now. I'm kind of glad I didn't do it. And that being said, every once in a while I think like, oh, I wonder if I would feel the same way about writing. And I could see like there being like writing it, and then like, you know, when you hand off that script, like to a degree, if you're like not executive producer or anything like that, you are like relinquishing control of it for a bit, but you did get to have fun writing the story in your mind and doing that, like having that experience. I think that could be really cool. And I could see that being exciting, and then handing that off and being able to let it go and not worrying so much about it, like being ruined by somebody else taking it and doing their vision on top of it. But like, maybe that's where he's at, right? Like where I like that part of it. I'm going to keep doing that part of it. I do that part well. And just, you know.
Well, writing for movies seems like such a paradox, right? Because you get so much control. And then you hand it to someone else, and God knows what'll happen.
Right.
It might come out exactly how you dreamed. Mm-hmm. And you being able to watch that process happen. And, okay, I'm on set a couple of days a week. I give a note here. I give a note there. But I'm not doing it. I'm not responsible for it, right? That could be awesome. Yeah. Or you write something, you adore it, and then someone just takes a fucking machete to it. And it's like, what did they do to my boy, right? You turn into the Godfather. Like, you know, and there's no way to know which one, right? And so then you could become a writer-director. You could become Quentin Tarantino. You write your own script, you film it. And then everything is hanging from your fucking neck, right? And if everything isn't exact, if you don't adore every single part of it, and you have the control, and you have the responsibility, and where's the funding? Mm-hmm. In a vacuum, being George Lucas sounds great, right? You wrote and directed a super popular movie. You wrote the next one or co-wrote it or gave some ideas and let someone else wrote it, say, I love this. You guys kick ass writing it. My mentor is going to direct it. He's going to kick ass directing it, but I'm going to be on set all the time. If things aren't going right, I can step in and take over at any time, but also I can go run off and do whatever the fuck else I want to do. Or I can be in the boardroom while they're on set, even though I hate doing that, and I'm getting ulcers from the fact that funding this movie, even though I made one of the most successful movies of all time, they still don't want to give me the money for it. Like, and you just learn that there is no one perfect thing, and then that is true of everything, right? You could be a line cook because you love cooking, and you just love the literal cutting and frying, whatever. Or you could be the chef, so you can set the agenda, and now you got responsibility, you know. But if you're the line cook, you got the chef who's a fucking asshole who's screaming at you. And if you own your own restaurant, you can control every aspect of it, but that means everything's hanging from your neck, and you're doing spreadsheets, even though
you're working 25 hours a day.
All you know how to do is cook, and now you're talking to an accountant because you don't know how to do the books. Like,
Right.
it's life is hell. And yet, what else do we have but it?
Yeah. In closing, we feel you, Garland.
Not in closing. Transition to another Garlish. Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland's Warfare feature casts Reservations dog star DeFaro Woon-Atai, and I hope I got that right because I've never seen that name before and I don't know. This is on Deadline. This was from a few weeks ago. On the subject of Alex Garland no longer being a director, he's going to find different people to partner with to make his movies. They've landed a leading role in the previously untitled war movie now known as Warfare from Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland for A24. Woon-Atai will portray Ray Mendoza. Sources close to production tell Deadline. Mendoza joined the Navy in 1997 and served for over 16 years as a member of SEAL Team 5 and a land warfare training detachment and Bud S instructor. He was awarded a Silver Star for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against the enemy while serving as lead communicator, Naval Special Warfare Task Unit Ramadi, in direct support of Operation Iraqi Freedom on November 19th, 2006, according to the Military Times. He co-founded War Office Producers alongside retired Army Ranger Jericho Denman. Warfare is the second collaboration for Garland and Mendoza, who served as the military supervisor for Garland's latest film, Civil War, set for release on April 12th. The pair wrote and will co-direct the film. Andrew McDonald and Alan Reich of DNA and Peter Rice will produce. A24 will handle the global release of the film. As Deadline previously announced exclusively, Charles Nelson is also part of the cast. So like I said, this is from a few weeks ago. I haven't seen any further updates to the cast or whatever. A lot of times you see like these things come in like dribs and drabs and then there's like a flood of information. So I haven't looked into it any further. This is obviously a developing story over these weeks and the coming months or whatever. Woon-Atai is a 22-year-old OG Cree First Nations actor who just wrapped work on FX's Reservation Dogs, who my close personal friend Alan Sepinwall loved that show. I have not watched it to this point. From creator Sterling Harjo, following the show's conclusion in September.
Wasn't Taika Waititi involved in that?
He was one of the producers, yes. This is more just about the actor and other roles he was in, which is clearly written by his agent, which is great for them. Anyway, this is some of the conversation we're seeing about Alex Garland from now on. He's going to do more writing. He's going to find people who are going to help make the movies that he wants to make. Mm-hmm. Kind of a la the George Lucas thing. He's going to be the idea man. He's going to write the scripts. He's going to find people who he trusts to make the movies for him, so he doesn't have to be the.
That's all. I think that's awesome. That feels like a healthy path forward.
We love this filmmaker. I still have not seen Men, just because honestly, I totally missed that he was even making that movie, and then it just like came out, and I was like, oh, and I just have still not sat down and watched it yet. Obviously,
2022.
Yeah, it literally. I heard about it a week before it came out. I was like, "Where the fuck did this come from?" This movie was one that we were excited for because it grew from the idea of the show that he was talking about making in the aftermath of making Devs. He turned it into this movie. This is what we're super excited for. So much of the cast was in it. From that show is in this movie. The realities of life lead to that we don't always get to go to see things on opening night anymore.
Yeah.
But I know you're excited to see it. Life stands in the way more for you than it does even for me. And even I was not able to get to it when I wanted to. But I am super excited to see this movie.
Same.
Much though the fact that it could be incredibly depressing considering the subject matter.
I've heard strange.
I'm sure it will be. I mean, the concept is somewhat strange. But I love and respect this filmmaker. Yep. Doesn't mean he gets everything right. Doesn't mean that everything will be perfect. Doesn't mean I have to like the topic he's choosing. But I would like to support this movie. I would like to see this movie and for us to talk about it in hopefully a coming episode.
For sure. I'm with you. Anything else on news and nuggets?
That is it for news and nuggets for me.
Well, then I believe it's time for a little consumption.
Okay.
What are you consuming?
So the Curb Your Enthusiasm finale was a week and a half ago. Sorry, not the season finale, the series finale.
Nice.
Did you hear anything about it?
No.
Anything about it? And you never watched any of the show, right?
I have not. No.
I know we've talked about it a bit off and on when I told you I got into it for the first time several years ago. All that. Speaking of, ways to make projects or whatever. Larry David had a very interesting agreement with HBO in the making of this show, where after the first couple of seasons, they did that thing that, sometimes shows do, where they end some seasons as if it could be a series finale because they don't know if they're going to be canceled or whatever. But the thing is, after a couple of seasons, there was never any risk of cancellation from the HBO side. The deal that HBO and Larry David brokered was, whenever you want to make a season, let's make a season. It could be a year from now. It could be 5 years from now. Whenever you have an idea, let's do it.
Okay.
Which is how, at one point, there was a 9-year hiatus between seasons.
Yeah.
And then he came back and did seasons every year and a half-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And he announced that this was going to be the final season. They did it. We talked about it a little bit once I started watching the season, all that. Pretty much every season, I think, had some sort of through line. Sometimes a big one, sometimes not so big one, that started in the first episode, and they would either touch on it occasionally, or most things would be in support of it. The way that old school television was made at some time. Although I think they did a good job, for the most part, of keeping a firm handle on a good amount of the episodes, devoted some substantial time to advancing the plot in whatever way.
It's kind of fun to retroactively look at old series over the course of the past 2 decades and see how much of a consistent storyline there is. There's always some, I feel like, and then there's Friends, where it's a sitcom and there is a story. It's a lot of it's these characters going through life. There's the through line of Ross and Rachel, will they, won't they? There's the other members of the group. There's Chandler and Monica becoming a thing throughout the series. There's long running things, right? Mm-hmm. There's Ross, this whole storyline that each character actually has their own storyline that is continued from the beginning to the end. And that's interesting. There's a weird variation of it, but then each episode stands on its own and is very funny. Then there's something like Modern Family, which we watched recently, where each episode stands on its own, and the story throughout the series largely doesn't matter.
Okay.
These people are just getting older, and their dynamic is changing, and that's it. There's no storyline that is really
it's a vibe show.
That goes through the whole series, which is interesting. The Office, I feel is a little bit more. It's kind of in between those two, where there's clearly something going on. There's definitely characters with will they won't. There's Jim and Pam of it all, and there's but it's also very much a watch one show and just have fun with it. But there is a whole story there too. So it's just kind of interesting to see those variations in these series.
And you could look at with more dramatic shows, you have a show like The Wire, where it's pretty much all the same cast of characters. I mean, certainly as seasons go on, there are new characters introduced. Mm-hmm. But most of the original cast, some seasons, some will be in more or less, even if you have a handful of people you identify as the core cast. But each season tackles a different theme or institution. The first one is literally about how drug units in police force in a city deal with drugs. The second one is about corruption on the docks in Baltimore and how that's all handled. The third season was actually, I always kind of jumble the third and fourth season, but one of the seasons is about how one tries an alternative to the war on drugs, because the war on drugs wasn't really working.
Mm-hmm.
One was about the schools, how schools in inner cities can perpetuate these situations of inequality and stuff like that in cities. The fifth season was about the news and the media and how they interact with these things and where they have their own strengths and weaknesses and all that sort of stuff. So each season is all about the same people in the same city, and there is an advancement of time, and there's an awful lot of things that change, and yet very much the theme of the show is that nothing changes, because it's in the interest of the people who are in power. But even there, from the start of the show to the end of the show, a lot of people who are in power or grabbing power or ascending in power don't stay in power. And so the cycle perpetuates itself, not even at the behest of the powerful, because those names change as well. And it almost becomes this examination of the fact that somehow this plan can keep happening even though it's not being executed by the same person. You know? It's... Yep. And, again, you get episodes where, like, they advance the plot a lot or not so much, or like, okay, this storyline is getting advanced every single episode, but these things fall by the wayside, these things ramp up and down, whatever. Like, it was a really interesting way that it was done. It could almost even be frustrating at times, where it was like, I don't know what this episode really accomplished on its own. And then when you look back at it within the grand scheme of things, you understand how important it was to the building of that season and of the show in total. So anyway, back to Curb. You watched Seinfeld, right?
Yeah.
You know how Seinfeld ended.
Mm-hmm.
It ends, for anyone who doesn't know, right? They get arrested on some obscure Good Samaritan law. They go to trial, and everyone that they've wronged on every little petty foible comes and testifies against them. They get thrown in prison, right? This season kicks off of Curb, the final season, kicks off with Larry traveling to Georgia. His agent books him this deal where he goes to some wealthy guy's party for like a couple hours. And it's supposed to be pleasant and engaging with the guests, because the guy is such a big fan of him. And of course, it's Larry, so he pisses someone off, this and that, blah, blah, blah. The guy feels like he didn't hold his end of the bargain. They get into this pissing match of whether he's going to get paid or not, etc., so on. Before he leaves, they were staying with Leon, who's played by JB Smoove, who joined in like the 5th season. That season took place. He hosts a family of people displaced by Hurricane Katrina.
Okay.
And ultimately, the rest of the family goes about their life at the end of the season, but Leon just lives in the guest house for the rest of the show. He's just always around.
Yeah.
So they're staying with Leon's aunt, who was in that season.
Okay.
His aunt is online to vote for, I don't remember what election it was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be the presidential election. It was just supposed to be some election. It's a Georgia sunny day. It's 95 degrees. Larry brings her a bottle of water. As people may or may not know, a couple of years ago, Georgia passed this law that you cannot provide food or water to someone waiting online to vote in the state.
I didn't know about this.
You weren't aware of it? It was kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal when it happened. It's called...
I feel like I might have scrubbed that one.
I can understand why you would want to.
Yeah.
They call it, for lack of a better word, election interference law. So Larry just gives a bottle of water to someone he knows. He gets arrested.
I love this.
Yes. So the whole season's through line, which some episodes they don't talk about it hardly at all, and other episodes are built entirely around it. He's got to get ready for a trial in the state of Georgia. So everyone are making, okay, it's a political statement. Larry's a champion of the people now all of a sudden, even though the whole premise of the show and of Seinfeld was how much he hates people.
That's great.
It was an interesting season. The first couple episodes I wasn't so sure. There was a real sweet spot in the middle of this season where I thought they were crushing, firing on all cylinders. There were some really good episodes, some really classic moments. But it's very clear they're setting this up to end in like the exact same way as Seinfeld, right?
Yeah.
It ends with him being prosecuted for something random and obscure and seemingly unjust, and he's got to convince people he's not a total piece of shit. So of course, they're going to get the many people
all
that
the character witnesses
over the course of the show.
Uh-huh.
Now, I don't know what interest level you have in watching the show. I don't know if you care if I spoil the finale.
I think you could spoil it. I am curious to watch it. I don't know that I will. But...
Okay. Anyone, fast forward a couple minutes. We won't spend too long. What do you want to call it? 2 minutes? 5 minutes? You want to put a note in the thing?
Just call it 2 minutes.
So, the people that are important to him show up at the trial, right? Jerry shows up. Richard Lewis, his agent Jeff and his wife, Leon, his ex-wife, played by Cheryl Hines, who was his wife Cheryl David on the show, who is with Ted Danson, who is playing Ted Danson, who in the show universe has divorced from Mary Steenburgen. They're still married in real life. Okay. She was in the first couple seasons. She's not been on the show in a long time. So, they're trying to make him look sympathetic. All that, of course, they fail miserably. Whatever. Of course, Larry loses the trial.
Sure.
Gets sent to prison.
Yep.
They have what seems like a total non sequitur. It's because Jerry is he wasn't in the whole season, but he's in the last episode or two. And he was in a decent amount of season 7, I want to say, because the whole season is about them doing a Seinfeld reunion. So all 4 of them end up back on the show a decent amount that season. So Jerry's in this, whatever, he was supporting the trial. You get a couple scenes with Jerry. Jerry goes to this restaurant and runs into this guy, and they have this really weird interaction, and he's like looking at him, whatever. And as he walks past, he sees it's Charlton Copley was the guy who plays the rich guy who hires Larry in the first episode. He's trying to talk to Jerry, and Jerry blows him off in the same way, and he ends up. I'm like, what a weird 90-second scene.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with anything after Larry's already been thrown in jail. They throw back to the very first episode of the show, where the first episode of Curb was called The Pants Tent, and it was about when Larry wears certain pants, when he sits down, his crotch creates that tenting.
Yeah.
And yeah, he remarks on it to his wife, and she's like, oh, that is kind of funny. And it becomes this whole miscommunication because her friend sees him sitting there and she thinks he's got a boner when she's talking. Yeah, so Chris, this whole thing where Cheryl apparently forgets that they had this conversation and is like, why are you having an erection when talking to my friend? So he's sitting in his cell, there's another guy sitting in another cell, and he's like, and he's playing with the the same way he was in the first episode. And the guys, you can't see him what they're talking about. He's like, whatever. They're like, you know what? The guy's like, I stopped wearing corduroy because I got those things too. It's fucking awkward, whatever. Jerry comes in. They say you got a visitor. Jerry comes in. He says, you're free. And Larry's like, what? He goes, come on, you're out. It's all taken care of. He's like, I don't understand. And he goes, come on, no one wants to see you in here. And it's like, almost, you're like, are they just breaking the fourth wall? Like, oh, like no one wants to see Larry and Joe. No, in this, in the weird sequence I described, the guy he runs into and has a super weird interaction with, the jury was supposed to be sequestered. The guy was one of the jurors. He broke sequester, so the conviction gets overturned.
Oh my god, that is so good.
So he's like, oh my god, I can't believe this crazy technicality, whatever. So they're walking out, whatever. It's like, that's just it. And then all of a sudden Larry turns and goes, I just had an idea. That's how we should have ended the show. and the both of them throw their hands up like, oh my gosh, that's how we Because the whole thing all along was, in real life, Larry's been like, I don't have anything to apologize. I thought it was the right ending for the show.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing throughout the course of this show, and specifically this season, is Larry keeps the same refrain. No, I don't learn lessons. The title of the final episode is No Lessons Learned.
That's great.
But the final one they learned was, it didn't have to be that serious. Yes, it was funny to make them go to the trial and get convicted. They didn't actually have to go to prison. They could have just ended it with some bullshit technicality.
Some other joke.
Fucking
another
comedy.
punchline. Yeah. Yep.
And
that's
so
really funny.
The very final sign-off is Richard, Leon, Larry, Jeff, Ted, Cheryl, Susie, they're all sitting on a plane in the same row in first class, and it's just them bickering like fucking pieces of shit over one of them opens the shade and it's too bright in the cabin and she needs it to read, and the other one can't read because it's too bright, and it's just them bickering, and the show
which is the end of the other show, but they're just in jail doing it, and it's kind of a nice mirror of them. Basically, they're in jail by their own personalities, which is kind of funny.
Yes,
that's awesome. I actually, honestly, you telling me that does make me want to watch the whole thing. It's
a really good show. I found when I was binging it, especially in the early seasons, I got and I watched them actually not too far apart in time. This and Always Sunny. When I binged them to catch up in real time to where they were eventually, you'll watch a handful of seasons in a row. I would find myself occasionally, I would be laughing, I would enjoying the shit out of it, but I would sometimes have to turn it off after an episode or two.
Yeah, the darkness.
Either the darkness or just oh my gosh, this is so disgusting, the things that you people are doing to each other.
I hit that point with It's Always Sunny, and I never ended up picking it back up.
You just got to figure out what pace works for you, where it's like, okay, I've like flushed for a couple of days, like I'm good. Sometimes for me,
I definitely do, because that show cracks me up.
Both these shows. I love both those shows. They're so funny. It is there is a quota that you can hit, and you just have to give yourself a minute at times because people are so loathsome. Yeah. I loved the show. I thought the finale is long, and I was a little worried early on because I was like, okay, this isn't funny, but they're spinning a lot of plates trying to set up this whole big final courtroom scene. I thought they totally redeemed it with how they nailed it at the end. It's such a dumb punchline, but the whole thing is no one wanted to see them actually in prison. They wanted to see them sweat on trial. No one wanted to see that. Not that it was wrong to do that because like they were terrible people, right? Maybe not prison worthy people, but they were terrible people. And the same thing. The Larry on the show is what's the word I'm thinking of? Like mal something, not a malcontent, but like whatever, something. It was just like he is not meant for society, and he does very often get quote unquote punished during the run of the show. But the whole thing is he is so insanely rich that at the end of the day, enough money gets shelled out, and he can just continue being the piece of shit that he is in the show. You know what I mean? Like, there's never real consequences. He often has to pay, but he just gets to keep going on and doing the shitty things that he likes to do.
I read years back there was a really well written like funny fan theory about Seinfeld, and the ending being that they actually died when Kramer was getting the water out of his ear on the plane. And the plane went down, heard that, and they were just in purgatory, which is really funny considering how horrible they are. Like, they're not hell people, but they're not heaven people. Yes. and I think that I actually love that concept. Yeah,
I agree. It's one of those fun theories. Same thing. I know I've mentioned it on the show a few years ago. I'd read, someone's theory. I forget who it was. It was a baseball player or something like that. It was his theory on the Sopranos ending was that, the whole Fades to Black was the audience getting whacked because Chase had become so disgusted by the bloodlust of the audience, where like he kept making people do worse and worse things, and people were the more bloodthirsty, they'd kill off a major character. It's like, we want more of that, we want more of that. And so his whole thing was the ending of the show is these stories will go on in whatever form or you won't get to see them because your time has come.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like,
that's cool.
I thought that was a cool concept. I don't know that it was actually what David Chase had. Sure. In fact, I suspect it wasn't. But that theory fits the events, and it fits the tone around what was happening at that time. And it's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. And I like that. That's cool. I've got a consumption that I think you'll appreciate. Mm-hmm. Ian and I we are burning through Jack Ryan.
Oh.
Just decided to put an episode on last week. I'm in season 2.
Okay.
I really like it. It's just like everything I wanted. I was like, I'm in the mood for like one of these types of like, I don't know, like espionage, and I was like, I remembered watching Without Remorse and liking it, and then listening to it and never finishing the audiobook, but like I kind of want to go back to it because I was really enjoying it. Like, it was a weird time and I didn't get through it. I was like, let me just throw this on because it's been here. It's 4 seasons. I was like, I'll start it. Got through the first season. I was like, man, that was really good. Like, I just like really, really liked it. And then, so now we're like on the 4th episode of the 2nd season.
I really enjoyed season 1. I didn't particularly enjoy season 2. Mm-hmm. Season 2 was also by far our most consumed written piece on the Spin Chewed website. Like, thousands and thousands of views. And like engagement too. Like, there were people like commenting on the article who I went and like chatted with and shit like that. Like, which I thought was kind of a cool experience. I really didn't like that I thought that they did a really good job with the first season. I really liked what they were building, and they just hard reset after the first season. I hate when shows do that.
Oh yeah. I see what you're saying. I think I get that. I remember that you telling me that there was a season that you didn't care for, and
I still didn't see the 3rd season.
Oh, okay. And but when it started, I was like, it was definitely like, I was like, oh, wait, let me get my footing. Where are we? We're not doing okay. We're just, these characters know each other. Okay, a little bit of a nod to the okay, got it. We're just doing something else. Okay, then I just accepted that and moved on. I'm not. I don't. It's fine.
Yeah,
I'm still enjoying it.
But obviously, well known how much I adore the series of books, and the first season it really doesn't adapt any of them. I thought it did a really good job of adapting the tone.
That's actually what I was going to ask you. This is like an original story, but with the characters and the ethos of Jack Ryan.
I thought the first season did a really good job of what would a modern telling of a Jack Ryan character type of story look like. And I was like, okay, you have him meet his wife, whatever. You have the other major characters, like, or at least one or two of them. Like, this is what a modern day Jack Ryan would look like with those sensibilities, like, kind of stitched together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I appreciated the first season. I thought they did a really good job. I liked the interplay between these major characters. I thought that Krasinski's a good Jack for that stage of his life.
The villain was super compelling also.
And they took all of the things I liked about the first season and threw it out the window to start the second season. And it just became, in my opinion, kind of just a generic action show in the second season. Like, it's fine as that.
I did clock executive producer Michael Bay.
Yeah. It just, like, all of what I found to be kind of like the heart of the first season, which I thought did a good job of carrying through the concept of what Jack Ryan's about in the books.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they just threw it all by the wayside. It just became like a generic show, which is fine on its own. It just wasn't what I wanted. I wanted a Jack Ryan story, even if it wasn't a specific Jack Ryan story.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? To me, that was frustrating.
And you said you stopped it too.
Yeah, well, because there was like 3 or 4 years between like the second and the third season that came out. I just never got around to it.
There's 4 seasons though, right? Because it said 4 on Amazon. Is the 4th one not out? I don't know.
You know what? Maybe the fourth. Sorry, maybe there was a big gap between the third and fourth season. The fourth season, I think, was announced as the final season. Yeah, sorry, I didn't. I've only watched the first 2 seasons, I think.
Gotcha. All right, I'm into it. I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to continuing on. It definitely, the second season definitely does not. I fully get what you're saying, and it doesn't have the same vibe. But not being as attached to the material, I'm having an almost as good of time with the second one.
Okay.
As I am. So that's been fun. But yeah, each morning I watch an episode of that when I'm feeding Ian, and then start my day all jacked up. Nice. Yeah. Also, we're still watching Suits.
Okay.
We're in the 8th season of Suits. Mm-hmm. One thing has become very clear.
Yeah.
Is that it should have ended with 7 seasons.
Oh.
And there's still another one.
Okay.
There's 9. As you know, characters leave.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue a main character left. So that's kind of like
now. Did that main character leave to say get married to a royal or?
Yes. Well, so Mike and Harvey are the 2 main characters. Like when the show starts, and you can argue that it's an ensemble show, but there are 2 main characters, and it's Mike and Harvey. And honestly, you might even go as far as saying that it's Mike, and just under Mike is Harvey. Like they're like very close. Sometimes they switch roles as who is the lead, but like they are the leads of the story.
A Batman and Robin situation.
That's on, and they call each other that throughout the show, which is great.
Perfect.
They switch to Superman and Batman here and there, but it's good. Anyway, that dynamic is what makes the show.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a season in between where one of the characters goes off somewhere else and is still on the show, but like you feel it then when they're not working together. It doesn't feel right.
It's like Jim going to whatever office.
Yes.
In the office.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right, but then they bring it back together and it starts to feel good again. And then it's the end of the 7th season, and the person that he's marrying is going in to marry royalty, and they leave the show. But they both leave, where they could have just had her leave and I feel continue the story and like written it in a semi-clunky way where they have a long-distance relationship and it's fine. Like they could have just done that and it would have been fine. But they didn't do that. He left also, one of these co-leads. And
I mean, I guess it's hard if they were building towards them getting married or whatever. Like, you can't just be like, okay, we got married and now she's going to go over there.
They had plenty of space for it. There was a ton of different things they could have done. It could have been that she got offered the job to do this thing and really liked it. And because they had actually talked in previous seasons about how like making long distance work if she went to law school somewhere else. Things like that. Anyway, they could have done it. They chose not to.
So it's funny. I mean, I remember I never watched the show. I know it was kind of a big deal at the time, and it became another big deal again last year or whatever. But I remember hearing that they were, writing the character off because the show was taking over. I didn't realize one of the guys left. Also, I had no.
Yeah, and I would argue
or at least I didn't remember anyway.
Even though I'm arguing that that the two guys are the leads, the Rachel, the character that he marries, is arguably the second lead. Those two are tied for first, and then Rachel and Donna are tied for second, and then Lewis is a third. Moves between second and third. But two of these, a main and the second left. And now the dynamic is just completely off the wall. They had to introduce new characters. They don't really fit. Another lead-ish character left in the 7th season. It didn't care because I didn't care for the character. But they ended up spending an entire episode and a half talking to that person again and going to where they are. And I'm like, if you had just spent a little bit more time tying up loose ends between the rest of the cast, you could have just ended the show, and it actually would have been a nice ending.
Yeah.
Now they're just going to fizzle out, I feel like. Well, we'll see. I'm just going to finish it. We're close to the end, but
it's tough because on the one hand, it's if they still had ideas for the show, and the other lead is well, fuck, I don't want the show to end just because they want to leave. You know what I mean? It is tough to balance those things, right?
For sure.
It's why the fuck does her leaving the show mean that I have to lose my show that I'm on?
Yeah, it's very odd. And you can I feel like you could tell that they didn't want to do that because they spend an episode here and there being man, I miss Mike. And talking about doing things like Mike would have done them. And if Mike were here, he would have done X, Y. It's yeah, just Mike should be here. You chose to do this.
Even I'm surprised they couldn't even come up with maybe a guest starring situation where okay, maybe he didn't want to be on the show either anymore, but
right,
maybe a little bit.
And I mean, I feel like there's still opportunity for that. I don't know. I am not done yet, so maybe he has come back in some capacity. We'll see. I hope he does, because right now I'm but there's a really funny. The reason why I needed to jump right to Suits after this is I got Diane Krugered by Jim Greer.
Oh.
His character in Suits, name is Robert Zane. I do not know what the actor's name is.
I should know his name because I do like him. Also, he was in The Wire.
In The Wire, yeah. But I was gonna say, I was gonna say, actually, I got Diane Krugered by Robert Zane, that's because I was watching Suits first. I was oh, you know what? Oh, I was in the mood for one of those shows. It's I'm gonna sit down and watch Jack Ryan, and it starts. I'm get the fuck out of here. I was what are you doing? What are you doing in here, Mr. Zane?
It's gonna kill me. I can't think of his name now because I like him a lot, and I can't think of his name. Wendell Pierce.
Yeah. So, Wendell. Anyway, been watching that. It's a little bit clunky right now. I'm hoping that they can kind of stick the landing, but we'll see. It remains to be seen.
Yeah, I got Krugered aggressively by something a week ago, and I meant to text you about it. Oh, it's because I thought we were going to record, and I was going to tell you that day, and I didn't. I think it was literally that day, and then I didn't make a note of it, so I forgot what it was. But I had something show up, and I was whoa, this is a really random and aggressive and quick one. And it was one that was this isn't things that are currently in the zeitgeist. It was such a weird one. I have I don't remember at all what it was now.
Yeah,
it's a little frustrating, but I had a good Krugering the other day.
I am looking forward to the day years from now where somebody that somebody uses that turn of phrase, and I go, "Ha!" and then my life is complete.
That's how you know we've made it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
we should have shirts that are I've been Diane Krugered by the Spin Tune.
I got Diane Krugered by the Spin Tune, and all I got was the Slashy shirt.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Another consumption. The Bad Batch is rapidly approaching conclusion of its series finale as well. It's been a good season. I think this has been probably by far my favorite season of the 3, I guess.
Cool.
I forget exactly how many episodes left, but it's 2 or 3, I want to say.
It's like at the end.
Yeah, it's getting there. I watched the most recent one came out today. I watched it while I was eating dinner before. So, yeah, it's been good. You could see some of the, the many threads kind of coming back together. There's some old characters that they brought back from either the Clone Wars show or from earlier on in this show, which actually I've forgotten about because the first season was already a couple of years ago now. It's. I'm interested to see where it goes. If there was any doubt, it's become fully cemented that everything. I mean, I know we're talking a little bit about the shows and stuff earlier, but all of these shows, whether they be animated or live action, with the exception of Andor, all the other, let's call it the Filoni-verse, for lack of a better term right now, it's really trying to smooth out some of those wrinkles with the whole Palpatine has returned thing, right? Mm-hmm. We know that with the Grogu thing. We've seen that enough with Mandalorian. We saw a bit with Ahsoka, and here with this show is very much it's very obvious where that this show has all. There's going to be some important details that still have to come through, but like the amount of time spent on cloning and what they're now calling M count as close to midichlorians.
Nice.
They're just literally calling it that instead. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's meant to, I guess, fill in some of the gaps and all of that. And I don't know if that's the right or wrong thing, but I understand what they're going for. And
they made that choice, so they're fleshing it out further. Just for they can't go back on it. They can totally go back on what they've been doing with the Marvel universe, but they can't really go back on the Star Wars choices.
No.
So, yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
I watched every once in a while. I tune in here and there to SNL. Very much so when there's a host that I'm interested in. I do like to, even if I'm not going to watch the episode, I usually try to catch the weekend update because I find that to be very funny.
I recorded this past week's episode. I have not had a chance to sit down and watch it yet because Ryan Gosling was hosting, right?
There isn't a single miss.
I saw part of the weekend update because I saw the clip going around about Caitlin Clark when she came on. And I saw the scene. I saw the skit with Beavis and Butthead.
Oh my god,
that was fucking hysterical!
It was amazing,
cracking up.
What I need to say, like, if it happened in every episode and it was every skit all of the time, it would lose its luster. But in this episode of SNL, they don't make it through one skit.
Really?
And it's great. And it's because they're all that good. Like, the circumstance is ridiculous and the host is that charming that it's very funny.
I know everyone has their opinion on the cast members breaking.
Yeah.
And in general, I would say I don't prefer it. But
sure.
There are very specific instances, like when they do the weekend update and one of them has written a joke for the other one that just totally blindsides them.
Yeah,
that's a good time to do it. And what specifically happened in the Beavis and Butthead thing, where they specifically withheld information from her, and that's like a truly authentic break by her. She is processing it in real time. I was so just good. Watching her laugh was making me laugh almost as hard as she was.
That's what, like, when for some reason, like when Jimmy Fallon would break because he broke all the time.
Yeah, like that wasn't a big fan.
It wasn't that funny because it almost seemed like it would always happen, but it wasn't every episode. I mean, every skit somebody broke. A lot of times it was the host, which I think is always acceptable.
Yes, I think it's okay for the host to break because they're a guest here and everyone else is trying to make them laugh, and it's it's like a concerted effort by all of them. And if the host really catches someone by surprise and makes them break because they had like lower expectations and that person exceeded them, I think that's cool. But it's nice every once in a while for the actual players to make one of the other break because of something that's really good. But in general, like, they're the professionals, they're supposed to be able to get through it, and I don't always really want them to do very much of that.
You should catch the whole episode.
No, I did. I recorded it. I haven't had the chance to sit down and watch it.
And it also opens with a classic, a remake of a classic skit that Ryan Gosling had been on when he hosted previously. With the alien abduction skits.
Oh, that's what it was. I was like, I heard they did some
those.
recurring bit. I couldn't remember what
so
it was.
good. Just so
Oh, and what's her name? Came
funny.
back for it, right?
Yes, Kate McKinnon. She's fantastic.
She's she makes me so uncomfortable.
I know. It's so great. Oh my goodness. It was a treat. That Beavis and Butthead thing though, my goodness. That was perfect. The
Mikey Day it makes me uncomfortable. His face makes me uncomfortable in that.
Yeah. Just like the way they pulled that off was just like it's spot on. They're like, he looks exactly like Beavis. Can you have him move? And he looks at the guy next to him. He's like, go ahead, like, come on, move. Ridiculous. What else are you consuming?
So I saw a couple of notes a week and a half ago about. I had no idea this was a thing until like a day before it came out on Netflix. I want to say it was Netflix. A show called Ripley.
Oh, yeah, I really want to watch that.
Featuring, as he's known in the parlance, the hot priest. Mm-hmm. And Andrew Scott, I want to say.
Yeah.
My close personal friend.
Lieutenant.
Yes, also Lieutenant. Acceptable alternative name. My close personal friend, Alan Sepinwall, reviewed the show, raved about it. Mm-hmm. He's like, this is one of those shows where I'm like, why are they doing this? I think the movie said everything it needed to say. This does not need to be made. But I sat down to watch the show for my job. Really good. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I've never seen the movie.
Yeah.
And he made a note. I didn't read his whole review yet. He made a note. He's like, he had seen the movie, thought it was whatever. After watching the show, reviewing it, sat down to watch the movie again. And he's like, I don't know if it was just because I was younger, didn't quite get it, or whatever. He goes, it's fantastic.
Cool.
I was like, okay.
I love that.
Armed with that knowledge, I was like, I might want to check out the show. Let me finally sit down and watch the movie. I've heard good things. Sat down and watched the movie. It's really good.
Yeah.
I watched it not this past weekend, the weekend before.
Okay, cool.
Good movie.
Is it streaming on anything specific?
Yes. Don't remember what.
Cool.
But it definitely was streaming on something.
All right, fair enough.
I want to say Max or Amazon, but I don't remember which one.
Okay. I have both. That's
yeah, no, it was good. It was really good. It was not at all what I expected it to be. I don't know what I was expecting to be exactly. Sorry. Let me put it this way. For whatever reason, I thought it was supposed to be kind of like maybe a tongue-in-cheek, kind of humorous, like drama, like type of thing. Mm-hmm. No, pretty serious. Yeah. Not to say that there isn't moments of levity, because there definitely are, especially in the first third of the movie, I would say. But no, not. The tone was very different from what I expected. Not to say that that's good or bad. It just wasn't what I expected. Good movie. Good cast. Damon's really good. I had no idea at all that Jude Law was in it. I feel like he played at times it's like, this is a Jude Law character. And at other times it was like, I didn't know he had this range. Exactly. You know?
All right.
Not to say I dislike Jude Law.
Sure.
I don't know what my impression of him is, actually, honestly. I think he's fine overall. I know he's considered a good actor or whatever.
Dal's review of Jude Law.
He's fine.
Fine overall.
But yeah, good cast. Someone randomly who I didn't expect to see pop up, and it's funny, context-wise, it would have been only a couple of years earlier. Captain, Admiral, Commodore, whatever the fuck title he was, Norrington from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Mm-hmm. He's in it a decent bit. Gwyneth Paltrow, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
No, Lois. It's Philip
Seymour Hoffman. He is being extra Philip Seymour Hoffman in this. Cate Blanchett playing like a young, normal human being, which like she doesn't do that really. I feel like.
Oh, our range.
I mean, like playing of course, like an ultra wealthy, like
sure
hoity-toity aristocratic person, but still in all, playing a youthful person and not like an elf or someone else ridiculous who exists in society but only barely.
Yeah.
So, good movie, worth a watch.
All right, I'll check that out. Yeah, because I was definitely interested in the Andrew Scott business. So cool.
That Andrew Scott business.
Andrew Scott business. We were actually talking the other day about rewatching Fleabag because it's been a while, and that show is fantastic.
I almost started watching it a couple of years ago, and I don't remember why I didn't actually start at that exact moment. It was probably for the best because I don't think I would have continued it like in the way I needed to. So I still haven't gotten to it one of these years.
I had seen a brief thing about Ripley, and then I was talking to Kim about it. I was like, "Oh, we should watch this." And I told her who was in it. She's like, "Oh, yeah, definitely." And I was like, "We should also rewatch Fleabag." And then that evolved into and then Lovesick because we watched all of that stuff around the same time.
I would love to get back and rewatch that.
God, it was so good.
There's so many things I'd love to rewatch, but there's so many things I have to watch.
Right. Yeah.
That it's
don't look the snake in the eye. So
can't justify.
Back to consumption. I briefly mentioned on the previous episode that I was playing Dead Cells, and I got into that. Turns out that on Apple Arcade, which I have because I have the Apple One subscription thing, and I never utilize it. Lately, I've been utilizing it way more, which is great. Dead Cells Plus is on there, so it has all the DLC in it. Okay. It looks like, which is cool because some random things have happened where I'm like, Jesus Christ! But I started playing it on my iOS device, so I was like, oh, this is neat. And connecting a controller to my iPad and playing it, which has been a fun experience. So every once in a while, sit in bed, but for 30 minutes before going to sleep and play a run of that. It's nice. And then I was like, I should probably look into some of these other games. And I came across Slay the Spire, which I had heard about over and over again over the years and never ever touched.
I've heard about that a bunch.
I downloaded it and went, "Wow, this game is for me." I you know when that happens, it just clicks. It's and it is perfect. It's at this time in my life, as I mentioned, the roguelike game is perfect for me. I can get through it. And then when it's over, I could put it down for a bit and then pick it back up and play a run or half a run and then dive back in. It's fantastic because it's no long-term commitment to playing at a single point in time, which is ideal for my current scenario. But it's a roguelike card battle game. And you kind of get as far as you can and unlock certain things. I haven't figured out what persists yet. I don't know what, if anything, persists. I know that I've unlocked a character, and then next time I could play as that character. I don't know if there's any things that you get that stay, but it's cool because you play, and then each round you kill something. Each round you win, you get some gold, you get a potion, and then you get a card, and you get to pick between a couple cards, and you add them to your deck. And then that card is in your deck for the remainder of this run. And so every time you kill something, your deck is getting deeper and deeper. And you could choose I want to do a little bit more defense than offense, or have a nice mixture of both, or pick some of these other. There's a lot of choices, and then you could start to see how if I draw all of these cards, a handful of these cards at the same time, I could be in a really nice spot. And then you get to you figure out there's different ways to manipulate your deck so that you can draw some of these cards at the same time. But then you also have to worry about how much energy you have to play these cards one after the other. So it's what'd you say?
So is this Pokemon?
Yeah, basically it's a card battle game.
Yeah.
But it's really captured my imagination. And then I played it and died, and I was like, great, I could put this down and pick it up next time, and I could just start a new run and it'll be fun. And I'm really, really enjoying it. It's really fun. The controls are weirdly clunky for something that is so simple.
Okay.
You can touch a card and it pulls it up, and then you could read the rest of it. Of what it could do. You could see the name and how much it costs, but when you touch it, you could kind of read the description of it and what it does. And there's so many cards in my deck, I have to almost read each one of them each time until I really start to memorize them. And that gets a little annoying to have to do that when there's so much room on the screen that they could just be open.
Mm.
So I'm just be open. And then you if it's an attack card, you drag it to whichever thing you want to attack.
Okay.
Or you tap it, and then you tap the thing you want to attack.
Okay.
Right? But for some reason, sometimes when I drag it up and I get to the person that I want to attack, it snaps back down into my hand. I'm like, okay, dumb. So then I tap it for it to pop up so that I can tap the enemy, and I tap it, and then it falls back down in my hand. I'm like, just there's not much else to do on this screen. It's you're touching the thing and you're touching something else. What are you getting wrong? Like, so I'm a little bitter about that, but otherwise, it's really fun.
Okay.
Also, some of it, like I tried playing it on my phone, and the text it's just far too small.
To say, if you're having trouble with some of those sorts of mechanics on an iPad, I can't imagine it's better on the phone.
Yeah, I was just like, what is going on? I played with the trackpad a little bit instead, and that made it a little bit easier. But still annoying because it's a card game. It would be so easy if it just fucking worked. But it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
A minor transgression.
It's fine.
It's all right. It's really entertaining. It's like ooh, you'll get a card and be like, oh, like you start to realize like how sick that card will play by itself, and then how sick it would play if you had other ones in your hand at the same time. Like there's some that like I'll do 10 damage and then plus 2 more for each of the cards of this type that you have in your deck, and I'm like, oh. Different than the one that's like I'll do this number of things for the ones that you have in your hand. Like.
Yeah.
There's like, and I was like, it gets interesting. And like you could, each time you get to like one of these resting areas, you can like rest to get some health or upgrade a card. So you get to, you got to gamble a little bit. Like, hey, like you only hit them every so often. It's a free chance to gain some health and not have to worry about anything else. Mm-hmm. But updating cards can do some pretty cool things. Like, for example, there's this one card that was like ridiculous, and if you upgrade it, it does even more damage, which was crazy. And then there was one that was like had a sick level of block associated with it, and the upgrade was it costs 0. And I was like, oh, like that's like, and then you start to like, oh, that would like, and then I have one that's like, depending on how much block you have, this card does that amount of damage. And I'm like, so if I end up with the 0 with a lot of block in my hand, I could play that and then play that card with damage. It's really fun. It's fun to see where it could all go.
Any sort of game, whatever style game it is, that you can start to build those sorts of like synergies within like your team or your hand or whatever, like, or your power set. Like I always appreciate that sort of customization.
And it's safe to say that I've barely scratched the surface.
Of course.
So that's cool. You got any more consumption?
I have one final consumption. Okay. So this past weekend, no, I have 2. I have one quick one slightly less quick one. Quick one, because I forgot, because this was 2 weekends ago. Again, didn't put it down in my notes. Finished Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the show.
Oh.
Very good. Highly recommend if you haven't started it yet.
You know what's funny? When I was in the mood for like something action-y, something like spy-y, I was actually going on Prime to watch that, and Jack Ryan popped up. And I was like, oh, I'll watch this, because I've been meaning to watch that. And that's what happened.
Because I had mentioned that to you a while back when I first started watching it. I was like, watch a couple episodes, break, watch a couple episodes, whatever. Finish watching it. Really, really good. Really excited for the next season, if and whenever it shows up. I will say, slightly frustrating. First season ends on a cliffhanger. It was
not
like,
about that.
It was like, it was earned, and you probably know what happened. It's one of those cliffhangers where it's like, you probably know. I
get what you're saying. I don't think that series, like TV series, I don't think they should end in I think an episode can end in a cliffhanger.
Yes.
I don't think a season can end in a cliffhanger. A season can end in a tease. But if you don't fully close the storyline, I get pissed.
I will say this. There is a shootout between the main characters and some like interesting recurring guest stars.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends with a single gunshot where you don't see what happened. I think you could probably guess who won the battle. But it was a tense moment, Anyway, I really enjoyed it. It's one of those like fun, I don't want to say fun for all ages, but it's the type of show like anyone should be able to enjoy this. Like there's something for everyone in this. Love the group of guest stars I had across the season. Every episode had at least one. Like, some of them had more than one. A lot of them looked like they were having fun doing it, or like at least it felt like they were taking it really seriously. Like Ron Perlman was in one. There was 2 of them together. I forget. Wagner Moura, who's in Civil War. He was in Narcos, and I forget the actress who was. You remember Blade Trinity?
Vaguely.
The woman vampire who was like head of the group who was trying to bring back Dracula. I forget her name. You'd be able to, yeah, if you look it up, you'd be able to find it, of course. The one from, you watched American Horror Story some, didn't you?
I watched, I think, a season of it or some episodes and then was like, this isn't for me.
I watched, I think, season 3. That was the only one I actually watched a season of. She's been one of the main stars of the show. She was in it. She plays a couples therapist at one point. Paul Dano has a kind of a recurring role in a couple episodes. Bunch of really cool guest stars. Really enjoyed all of that. Fun show. Definitely. It was not what I expected. It's a spy show that becomes a relationship drama that becomes a spy show again. It was cool the way it all unfolds. I really ended up liking it a lot.
Parker Posey?
Yes, that's her.
Gotcha. Cool. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. My other consumption. Do you have any more?
Nope, I'm done.
My other one. This past weekend, a friend of mine had asked me a couple weeks ago if I would like to participate in a bachelor party for one of his friends. Which the bachelor party was, a few guys are going to go rent a house, and UFC 300 was this past weekend, and we're going to sit down and watch the fights. Because there's like 14 fights on the card or something like that. Mm-hmm. 8 hours of people beating the absolute piss out of each other.
Oh my God.
And it was, I enjoy watching a good fight. I don't keep up on boxing or MMA stuff like regularly. When I have friends who are really into it, I will sit down and watch it with them because I do really enjoy sitting down and watching a fight. You've come to our house for a fight before.
Yep.
I just don't like keep up with like the day-to-day, week-to-week stuff of it. I just don't. I've never really had the time or interest to do it in that way. But when there's like a big event, it feels cool. And like I appreciate like good fights, and like a bunch of these were really good. There was a couple that were a little boring, but overall, really strong card. It would hard to not be with that many fights. Sure. But the actual consumption part about this, separate issue. I sent you a couple pictures. Ridiculous house. I won't say where. Somewhere in New Jersey. I want to say the guy who owns it, some sort of Russian mafia maybe or not. Nice guy.
Sure.
But it's just the type of guy where it's like, there's no way you have enough money to own that car in this house.
Gotcha.
That's all I'm going to say. Very polite and kind to us.
Yeah.
Won't say any names, won't say the town.
Sure.
We're all safe. Awesome place. Game room was the picture I had. There was a shuffleboard. There was a ping pong table. There was a pool table. There was an air hockey table. There was a mini indoor axe throwing. There was pool outside, hot tub, fire pit. It was raining a bit. We did stand right outside because the huge glass doors there. We had a projector screen. Smoked a cigar while watching a couple of the fights. They had like 8 grills outside. It would have been a great place to host a huge barbecue. Some of the rooms super nice. I think they're still in the process of getting it all whatever done. Full blown wet bar downstairs. So we were posted up next to the wet bar. The consumption part of it, though, in addition to just the watching of the fights. My friend Sean, his friend James, is Chinese American. He's a huge fan of Korean fried chicken, like Korean barbecue. Mm-hmm. We went to this place, H Mart. I don't know if it's a chain or not, but there's similar Asian grocery places. A lot of them, Japanese, Chinese, Korean. This is a much more Korean-oriented one. Full-blown grocery store, but around it is almost like a food court thing. There's a bunch of different, like, not even like kiosks, like little like shop fronts of different restaurant type things, like takeout, whatever. There was mochi donuts. There was, different Korean barbecue things. There's a fried chicken place. We ordered a huge batch chicken. 6 different styles we got. Yes. Oh my God. So fucking good.
Yeah.
Fried really nicely, crispy.
Double fried.
Different, like I said, 6 different sauces. They have like 15 different sauces we could have chosen from or something like that.
Nice. Really
fucking good. He wanted Korean barbecue chicken and pizza. That's what he wanted for his.
Okay.
It's his bachelor party. So we ordered a couple pizzas as well. One of them was, let's call it a Philly cheesesteak pizza. It's pizza. It also had steak and American cheese and peppers and onions. So many goddamn mushrooms. I found a way to make do because the rest of it was really good. Even the onions, surprisingly, for me. He also wanted a pepperoni pie. No, I was ordering on my phone after we'd picked up the chicken.
Yeah.
Have it delivered, whatever. I got a pepperoni and chicken parm pizza.
Yeah, I'm into that.
But so, like, I went through the many different options. Like, there was 15 specialty pies. 6 of them sounded awesome. You know, a couple of them were, like, generically, like, every pizzeria has the word. Like, so we got the Philly cheese one. He's like, oh, I don't need anything else crazy. Like, you know, a lot of them were, like, chicken oriented. He's like, we got so much chicken, like, just pepperoni. I was like, great. They don't have just pepperoni pizza. Plain pizza. Add pepperoni. I got pepperoni and parm. I don't understand how that happened.
Hey.
I opened it and I was like...
Lord works in mysterious ways.
I opened it and I was like... I closed it again. I said, James, I'm sorry. He's like, what? I said, I know you said you didn't want any more chicken. But there's a bunch of chicken on this pepperoni pie.
You're not going to believe this.
It's like... It's basically chicken parm and also pepperoni. Not going to lie, the combination worked.
Yeah.
Did not expect it to work.
Why not?
Still, well, just because, like, it's not, I don't know, it just didn't feel like the type of thing you would combine on top of a pizza. I like pepperoni pizza, I like chicken parm pizza, I've never...
Just put those two together.
Never considered putting them together before. Either way...
A little spiced meat with chicken. Come on, of course it's going to work. Get out of here. Are you nuts?
The biggest takeaway from this, though, is...
There shouldn't have been a moment of doubt when you opened that pizza box, is what I'm saying.
No, there needed to be a moment of doubt, because I didn't order parm.
Okay, as long as it was related to that and not the...
Baffled how plain pizza with pepperoni yielded chicken parm.
This must be what it feels like to hit the Mega Millions.
If I had just opened it and it was a parm pie, it would have been like, oh, they grabbed the wrong one off the top of the oven. No, there was pepperoni on it also.
That's great.
It wasn't like you called over the phone and the conversation, like the call dropped or something, and like I ordered it online in their app.
Yeah, I kind of want that now, though.
Again, it worked.
Yeah.
Baffled. I ate so goddamn much food. Considering the amount of whiskey I consumed, I never felt like I was like actually drunk because of the unhealthy amount of food that I ate. And it was all delicious, including the weird pizzas. But I had a lot of whiskey, some of it very good, including Hibiki. Really good Japanese whiskey.
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was a Chinese American guy with Korean barbecue and Japanese whiskey. It was awesome. Hey. We had a great time. I loved it. Good luck to you, James, in your imminent nuptials.
Imminent nuptials sounds like that's just a weird turn of phrase. I like that. Nice. Well, that sounds awesome. The place looked really cool from the picture you sent.
It did.
That's it?
Oh, yeah.
All right. That's all for consumption. And with that, let us transition into our flick of the week.
Before we continue with the show, I was prompted by the fact that we took a break after doing the consumption. We always usually take a break, hit the bathroom, let's do our final thing. I was a little hungry. I had an early dinner, which is not common. And what I did was I popped open the fridge and I shoved some cold deli ham into my face. The reason I bring this...
Was it low sodium?
Was it what?
Low sodium.
It's not why I brought it up. It's not because I am the prism of pork himself. It's because...
I am deli meat.
The reason I bring this up now is because it sparked to mind something that's been going on the last couple of days. We've mentioned a bunch of times over the last couple of years how much I adore the Shutdown Fullcast, the internet's only college football podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, they are running what they call the Charitabundy Bowl. Now, if that sounds like nonsense to you, it's because it is.
Yeah.
For college football fans, you may recall several years ago there was a lesser bowl game called the Cherry Bundy Bowl.
Uh-huh.
That was the sponsor. I don't actually know what they are and what they do. I don't think they do either, which is why they took that ridiculous title. They run a charity week every year at this time. It's in support of an organization called New American Pathways. It is an organization that takes refugees that are in America awaiting for their paperwork to be finalized to get a green card to become eventually an American citizen. They help pay for a bunch of the other stuff that goes into all of that. Whether people need to go to classes for whatever job they're going to be or career they're going to be, starting or continuing in the U.S. as a newborn naturalized citizen and all that sort of stuff, or to get a driver's license because they didn't have one in whatever country they come from, et cetera, so on. It's a charity drive that they run for this organization. Most of them are in or have been in Georgia. This organization's in Georgia. It's called New American Pathways. They have this charity thing it's the EDSBS, Every Day Should Be Saturday, was a blog they used to run years ago. When you donate to this, if you choose to donate to this, and I'm not advocating on behalf of it, but if you'd like to do it, it's for a pretty good cause. If you like to help out people who are trying to make a new life in this country, and without getting into any of the details and everything, these are people who are trying to become American citizens. That's a great thing and all, right? They turn it into a competition amongst college football fans because who is more competitive in this country than college football fans? When you contribute, you can choose to do it in the name of... It has no actual affiliation with any college. Sure. But if you're, say, every year, by far the most money is raised by fans of the University of Michigan.
Okay.
They just won the national championship. I suspect that they will probably break a record this year in their own personal competition on this charity drive.
Amazing.
In addition to the very many colleges that you can list from the drop-down menu, there are other ones that are references to their show and their blog over the course of it. Mm-hmm. One of the ones, which I have contributed to in the past 3 years, is the University of Nightham. And me standing in front of my fridge at night, shoving ham into my face.
You just shove it ham into your face, you go, ha, night ham.
That's exactly right. Because everyone's been there. Everyone who is anyone has participated in Night Ham. We can all get on board with the University of Night Ham. You can donate under any name you want. You can write one in. You can pick from one of their 200 options on the drop-down page. You don't have to donate if you have to. We don't get anything from it. We have no actual direct affiliation to it other than that I respect those guys in that podcast and that what they're trying to do. It's a good cause. It seems like it's a good cause.
This message brought to you by the Prism of Ham.
By the Prism of Prism of Pork. Anyway, Night Ham, you know what to do. If you are actually genuinely interested in donating, it's New American Pathways is the thing. If you look...
That's cool.
EDSBS Charity Bowl.
EBDBBNB.
Yeah, I mean, even if you give to the organization not as part of their specific drive, but they are really active on it. The four of them will occasionally take over during this week while they're doing it, they'll take over the New American Pathways Twitter handle to tweet out information about it. All four of them do it. Organizations and people that they're fans of share it. They contribute to it. They do these updates. They had an initial goal of $300,000 to raise. As of tonight, they're certainly over $500,000 already.
Nice. They
may even be inching on $600,000. I haven't checked.
That's awesome.
Since we jumped on. So it's a nice thing. If you got some extra dollars, maybe you got a nice tax return, maybe send $20, $50, whatever you want to do.
I like it. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. And with that, we'll get into our flick of the week.
Perfect.
This week's episode is WarGames, released in 1983, rated PG with a 1 hour and 54-minute runtime. Your IMDb synopsis. A young man finds a backdoor into a military central computer in which reality is confused with game playing, possibly starting World War III.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tracks. That's actually one of the better synopses we've read from IMDb. Al, why don't you give me your toot length?
Sure, let me just bring up my page. A movie so 80s, I can taste the tab soda. Yes! Through the screen. Literally, parenthetical here. As soon as I saw him drinking it, I was like, that's going into my review somehow. Yeah. I literally just put, I paused the movie, created a note inside of the Google Docs where I keep or whatever. It was like, I literally just wrote tab under review. I was like, I'll figure out a way to make it look later. Went back to watching the rest of the movie.
Tab. There's a joke here.
Exactly. A movie so 80s I can taste the tab soda through the screen. A solid little suspense flick with a harrowing finale. 7 out of 10.
Nice. WarGames has its influence in so many properties that I hold near and dear to my heart. Having never seen it before, I can confirm it holds up. 8 out of 10.
So the funny thing was, so you mentioned this in the last episode we did.
Yep.
we had a planned-ish skipped week, and then we were going to record a week later or whatever, something like that, I want to say. And then we missed that week as well, and so it's been a couple of weeks.
No, I had a migraine one week, and then
That's
something
what it
came
was.
up the second week, so
Got it.
it just was not planned at all.
Either way. Well, sure. Regardless, there was a couple weeks between. But you had put out the other episode.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening for something specific in the episode, and I was just kind of let it go because I was doing something at work, and I just had it on in my head. I forgot that, I knew you mentioned the movie, that's why we were doing it.
Yeah.
I forgot what you actually said about the movie, other than just saying you liked it and wanted to do a movie. It's like, whatever. I just don't remember how much we talked about beyond that.
Yeah.
And that part was playing. And it's funny because I totally forgot you brought up the Ernest Cline thing, and I was watching it, and I was like, oh, Ernest Cline must have loved this movie.
Yeah.
The thought that was going through my head, I was like, there is so much Ready Player One in this.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, for sure.
And so I heard it again. I was like, oh, that's right. Anthony did say that.
He
nailed it.
There is so much more Armada in it, which is the other book. Which I don't know. I keep, when I think about Ready Player One, I constantly confuse it with things that happened in Armada, and I'm like, do I like Armada better? I don't know. I think I might. It's just really fun.
We all know that you like nerd porn auteur the most, but
but yeah, for sure. It's definitely a heavy influence in his work. It's like one of those ones where like I have got a list. I have got lists of movies to watch on so many different notes applications over the years, and I've never consolidated them. But WarGames tends to end up on each of them because I had never seen it before, and like by all accounts, it should be a movie for me. And I happened to have a movie night with myself available to me, and it was there, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna stop scrolling and actually watch one of these, and I watched that, and I was like, man, like this is. I was on the edge of my seat. Like I was like super invested. It's so wonderfully 80s, like you mentioned. Like it's just I don't know. There's a certain heart to those movies. I like that style. I like that time frame. I like the way that movies are done. Then I like the way they're shot. I like the dumb effects. Like I love it. I love it all.
It's incredible that this movie had that much heart when you consider how incredibly dark it is.
It's so dark.
Especially like the second half of the movie, right?
Yeah. It really is. I love the concept, like coming off of now thinking about it in retrospect, coming off of the creator, the idea of like the movie starts off with it's basically a simulated event where two people that are at missile control are given an order to launch. And one of them refuses to do it, and therefore they can't do it. And it's just to prove it was a test, but it shows that the human might not be able to do the thing. And
fantastic cold open, by the way.
It really is. It's like so it
ratchets it up like
very
crazy.
tense.
And then you have to immediately drop it down to something like it's just some kid playing a video game in an arcade.
Yeah,
it's like we're in high school. It's a serious time.
It's so well done. Like that, that abruptness, like that disorientation. It's like it's clearly it's calculated. Like that's really good directing and editing. Like that's well done. Like that was but then the idea like now we're gonna leverage that to let's put like automation in place where a machine can do it because the machine won't have that emotional decision to make.
I want to really stay on like the specifics of that opening scene for a second. Because it's like, okay, what's going on? It's someone in the snow, they're driving, they're shooting the shit, they come into work, okay, there's some like Mission Impossible like checkpoint thing going on. They go in, people are cracking stupid jokes, whatever. It's one of those obnoxious, like boring, how do these people not kill themselves, missile silo things that you hear about in like Wyoming or whatever. And then for it so immediately to go from this rote muscle memory of we're never actually going to do this, what does it matter, to okay, this must be the real thing, whatever, as the music kicks up and the shots are, you're getting close-ups on people's faces and the sweat on the brow. And it's like it was almost, it reminded me in some ways of that escalation effect in Dunkirk with like the way that they shoot like some of the sequence, specifically like the Hardy sequences in the cockpit with the Zimmer score ratcheting up like the clock and all that sort of thing.
Well, there's also the artificial claustrophobia of like pulling the camera really tight.
Yeah,
and like making you feel like you're in that room. Yeah,
that close up on everyone's face and like we're showing these the claustrophobia. Like from the one side, it's like, oh, there's like so much room on the other side of the room, and then from this angle, it's like they're sitting in each other's lap almost.
Yeah.
And that final sequence where you get the light glare reflected off of the one guy's face who won't do it, and in the background, his friend who he drove to work with, pulling a pistol on him.
Yeah.
Telling him to do it because they have to do it.
Right.
I mean, like, and then just for that to like end, and we just get a total reset of the sequence from there. Like,
yeah,
it's like, there's about to be nuclear war. How can we just have people droning in a boardroom?
Right. It's intense. But I would even focus on that even more, like pulling out the gun. The idea that's foreshadowing for the finale of the movie, in that if he shoots him, he can't launch the missile. It's an unwinnable.
Yeah, it's a catch 22, right? Yeah.
So like how do you just don't play? But I thought that's really cool. And I like in the earlier today, I was like, I did a quick recap. It was like a 15-minute recap because it's been a few weeks since it's.
Yeah, I probably should have done something like that.
Do a refresher, and I like it started by showing like a scene from the beginning, and like I just like stopped it and like thought about it for a while because like like that sequence that really did like. Way to get your claws in me, like right as the movie kicks off, and like now I am just invested. Like that was so good. It was like that's how you open a movie. Damn, yes. that was really good. And then so we cut over to there's obviously there's the politics, right? Of okay, well let's put these computers that we've been working on in place to do this thing because clearly we can't rely on human whatever. Surely there can be no problem with that. And I always loved the idea of the questioning and concern regarding artificial intelligence from that long ago. Mm-hmm. Right?
This is the time of Terminator.
Yeah. But it's just the idea of it like being from that, like there's something I don't know, I can't quite find the word for it, but like it's so futuristic at the time, whereas like, now you cut however many years later, we're like almost 40 years later from that movie. And it's like, it actually feels a little bit closer in time, but like they nailed the concerns then, and the concerns haven't changed because it's always going to be this question of like, what is consciousness? What is decision? Like, what is right?
To be fair, like, I know I talked about it was it a year ago or 2 years ago? Exactly. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I mean, Isaac Asimov was writing about this shit in the 1950s.
Yeah. But like even that though, the idea of like it's so smart and imaginative combined to be coming from that time. Whereas now we have all of our experiences and like the movies, and like we kind of have an idea of how computers work a little bit better, like on a general level, right? Like I feel like they're, at that point in time, it could be like a hobby or an interest or people's careers, but it's a much smaller group of people. Everybody now has a supercomputer in their pocket.
Yeah, so remember, back then, people were like, computers, they'll never be a serious thing.
Yeah,
it's like now I at work every day, I have 2 supercomputers in my pockets. Like,
yeah, and it's just like it's like fantastical. Like it's there's something really cool about it. But they do nail it. Like they nail where like computers are going in a really cool way. But I always love, from anything made of that time, you can't really conceptualize what it would look like in the future. Mm-hmm. And they weren't even trying to do that. They were just doing it with the technology of the time, right? So like a lot of like, basic light bulbs and like old screens, just because that's the tech of the time. But even like something else like Terminator, where it's like trying to be futuristic, but then like some of the computerized things that you see are very clunky, right? Because you can't fathom the minimalistic size of machines today. Like it's like really, I think that stuff is really cool.
I even found it interesting looking back at that time. I wasn't alive during that time, right? Like that movie came, was it 84 or 83, something like that?
WarGames?
Yeah.
I think it was 85.
Okay. I was born a few years
83,
later.
83, sorry.
I was born several years later. And like I remember my parents getting a computer in like 1996. Like that was the first computer we had.
Oh.
And the limits of the internet at that time. And my concept of like, I felt like I grew up alongside of the internet.
Sure.
You know, like, and you obviously, I'm sure, probably feel a lot of the same way.
Yeah, definitely. We're so late to some of that stuff.
And just hearing like what like regular people, even like people who were older than me, but at that time, talk about it and experience it in that same time frame. It's in my mind, up until a few years ago, I felt like that was the beginning of it. I didn't realize that like 10 years earlier, there were some people who was already making use of this. The first inkling I had of that was when we talked about when I watched *Halt and Catch Fire*. I had no idea about all of this in the 80s. That like, so like it almost seems prescient in this movie, but like there were people who were capable of it in that time and day. And like I had no idea the capabilities of computers at that time. Like I like looking backwards, I didn't know what they were able to do because it felt like those are things people would not have been able to do at the time that I was aware of. You know what I mean? Like 10 years later, there were people who were making less use of computers than he was at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
It felt very anachronistic to me.
Yeah, I think about. Do you remember what your first computer was?
I want to say it was an HP.
Was it like a tower or like a flat computer with a monitor on top of it?
No, we always had one that had a tower, I think.
Yeah. Our first computer
we had an HP and we had a Compaq one. I forget which one came first.
I feel like probably the Compaq.
Maybe it was. I don't remember.
No, maybe not. I don't know. But our first one was like a hand-me-down IBM from somebody that worked at IBM. Mm-hmm. And it was like one of those flat. It was like heavy.
Not my dad.
Flat. No, I don't think it was your dad. I think it was
no, I was just joking because
my godmother's
he worked for them at that time.
Ex-husband. But it was like a heavy flat box, and the big heavy duty monitor we like put on top of it.
Yeah, I forgot about that archetype because we like I'm pretty sure every computer we had a tower.
Do you remember like what Windows was when you, or like what the operating system was?
With the first one?
Yeah.
Well, because there was Windows with 3.1 or whatever the fuck it was. What was the next one after that?
Was it just 95?
I think we might have had 95 because we, like I said, I'm pretty sure we got a computer in like 96 because I think we got it.
So that would make sense.
I think we got it when we moved into the house, which was I think during 96 or maybe it was 97.
That's cool. So then you probably had 95 or
I think that was the first one we had.
That makes sense. And that's like the first. That's it, right? Like that's
the first actual operating system with like a GUI.
That's like the modern operating system. I feel like is like that's the first one that at least or the first popular one that like I can remember. We had 3.1. That was the first computer that we got was 3.1, and I remember that was where my love of computers like really took off because there really wasn't much to do on it.
Yeah.
So what we did do, like, I could open up a typing program and just like, type words and just like play around with that. I found out how to do a sound recorder. I found out how to write to a floppy disk. I was like playing these just incredible Windows 3.1 games like Jazzball and Rattler Race and Rodent Revenge and Chips, like these really ridiculous computer games like these like that are built into the system. And like, navigating and exploring, like I would spend hours on that machine just poking around to things because it wasn't connected to the internet. It was just what was on the machine. So, and then I'll never forget, like, one of my grade school friends, his dad worked with computers and he put this game, it was A-Force, I think it was called, on a floppy disk for me. And I installed it and I remember like learning how to do that and then playing that game. And it was just a really cool game where there's other ships, there's other other like fighter jets like flying in like a grid, and you can turn at each of the grid points, and when you are facing one, you hit the spacebar to shoot at one, but they could also shoot at you, and you have to turn away in time to not get hit. And like it was just like a really simplistic game. Like it really I remember it so vividly, and like man, that was so fun. And like I have that like memory of like fiddling around with the computer trying to understand how pieces of it worked. And, that's a long distant memory for me. Yeah. And then watching this movie and seeing him do all of like those very fun things that are even earlier than that was really cool because I could totally put myself in his shoes of like if I had the equipment, I would have totally been playing with like things to try to figure stuff out like this. And the whole concept of like the dialing and like having the phone, like that was just so cool.
It's funny because
really enjoyed it.
Like, yeah, I mean that was like well beyond what I would have been able to conceive of back then. And this is coming from someone who like, not that I really, really remember, but like I remember like having to use dial-up and like tell everyone I'm going on the computer.
Don't make a phone. Don't pick up the phone.
Don't make a call. Don't pick up the phone. You know, or someone else saying, you know, my dad saying it or my mom saying it. You know, I remember
the true origin of the second phone line.
Yeah, which we never got a second phone line.
No, we didn't either.
I remember having AOL. Like I remember like actually doing the process of engaging with the internet through the dial-up and the whole, you know, the phases of it connecting and all that sort of stuff. I remember not having like Google, not having search engines where you had to like know a URL.
Yeah.
It's like go to a URL.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, though, several times along this way, though, I don't remember when it switched. Like, I remember a before time and an after time. I don't remember when that changed. Like, when and how. Like, what was the day where it was like, oh, I could just search a thing?
Yeah.
Do you remember the baton pass of that time? Because I don't.
By the time I connected to the internet, Yahoo was a thing that I would use to search.
Because, like, I remember, like, using AOL Explorer and, like, going on the internet with Windows 95 for, like, years before, like, Google or Yahoo search engines were a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, so, like, you got in with 95. We didn't get a computer until 98 was, like, well established.
Okay.
Like a modern computer.
Yeah.
And that's when we had like our first one. It was built. There was like a computer store across the street from the pizzeria, and they like my dad like worked with a guy. They picked out parts. They built it for us, and it was just awesome. I remember like how cool that was. Like it had a DVD player in it. Like it was bonkers. Like it was so cool. But I remember that, and at that point we got online, and I just remember, we already were doing, like, there was already Yahoo, and I don't know when that started or like when that became popularized, but I actually don't remember a pre-search engine. Let me see when that came out, like when did Yahoo?
I thought that was the early 2000s.
94. One of the pioneers of early internet era in 1990s. However, its use declined in the late 2000s. Yeah. Okay. January 1994.
But I don't remember it being like particularly functional back then.
It might not have been. Yahoo is the partner of choice for thousands of global brands. Blah, blah, blah,
like I definitely used Yahoo. Actually, yeah, no, I definitely used Yahoo before Google, but I feel like it was post 2000 where like it actually was any sort of functional. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna say become popular and see if that changes. By 1998, Yahoo was the most popular starting point for web users.
Okay.
Which actually tracks with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Of when we got it, like our first Windows, like modern Windows machine was 98. We skipped 95 because we just didn't have a machine that could run it.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Anyway.
It's just fun. It's just like really cool to see, like how the idea of like how he was connecting and like what he was doing and, you know, getting into the school system and changing his grade and like all that stuff was like really fun. Like grabbing the password out of the teacher's desk that was written down on a piece of paper at the desk. Yes. Really funny.
Which is still a thing that exists today in 2024.
Yeah. It blows when people don't have a password manager. It blows my mind, but it's just so easy to have.
Which, to be fair, like for me, I have a good memory. I remember so many passwords, but there's also like things that you don't use them very often, and like they fade. You know, because you try not to have any overlap really. Like, so I use one too, especially for things that I only actually log into every once in a while. Or like, gotta be honest, I know there's someone out there cringing. Maybe it'll even be you, Anthony. Every once in a while, I will use the Google Suggest Strong Password for like important shit. It's like, no, I want this to be something of many more characters, many more randomized way than I can possibly remember. You know?
Yeah, that I think that's fine. Yeah, don't have the same passwords for things. I personally like using. I have like just a third party application that I use as a password manager. It's called 1Password. It works on all my devices. It's great, and then I only have to remember one long ass password. I prior to that though, even then, like when it first became a thing, like having all these accounts in different places, I always did I had a nice long password that was a base that was always the same, and then something that was identifiable for the thing that I was using. And that was kind of how I managed having different passwords, but it was able to remember them and like them being, reasonably secure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's funny, man. I did love like him changing the grade. I thought that was really funny that I hadn't seen this movie before, but I have seen Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
Where he changes the grade, and I thought that was really cool that happens in that movie, and like then knowing that like in hindsight was a nod to this movie.
In a lot of ways, he's kind of playing the same character.
Oh yeah, definitely. What a weird guy.
Ooh, Matthew Broderick?
Yeah. Yes. Just what a strange man.
Yeah, I guess so.
He's got a weird voice. He's got a like a kind of bizarre, unique look.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like he was in the casting room and they were like, I don't know why, but yeah.
They're like, yeah, you're the 80s.
You're the guy. You're our guy.
I do appreciate that, like, he's, like, called out. It's she says it, right? Like, you put all this work into this, why don't you just, like, do school? Like, why don't you just do it? It's like, he is clearly very intelligent.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a million examples of people who, like, things don't grab their interest. They don't apply themselves. Something grabs their interest. They do. This is not a news story. Wasn't a news story even in the 1980s.
Well, it's an interesting challenge, right?
Yeah. A movie like this, though, it does, when you consider the stakes of some of this stuff and like how lopsided he is, like there is an element of, there are like a lot of things that are easy to you, not just the computer stuff that like you probably could be fine just doing your stuff and like using this as your break class in case of emergency thing.
Yeah, like he wasn't just brainy with the computer stuff. He was also he was pretty quick witted and personable and like
that's what I'm saying. Like he had other skills that like he was good at also. Where it's like you're more well rounded. It's not like computers is the only thing you can do.
What was there's a ridiculous line. The line that gets him sent to the principal. Can you give us an example of reproduction without sex? Your wife. That was good. Oh man, that was and yeah, he gets himself sent to the principal. He grabs the password. He changes the grade. Makes it. I'm not going to give myself an A. I'm gonna make it believable. I thought
it's the perfect crime.
It's the perfect crime.
Well, because if he just shows up and he's got all A's all the time, like it's gonna raise questions. Yeah. But if he shows up with a bunch of B's and C's, keeps his parents off him, no one raises any questions. Mm-hmm. He seems happy with it. It's the perfect crime.
Yeah. I just love the idea that we talked about the intro being like pretty heavy and establishing like this thing of the computer and the war game, like the war machine, well the Whopper, war operations planning. What was the thing called?
I don't know.
War. Did I write it down anywhere? War operation plan response. And then you so you do that and then you cut over to this kid and you introduce him and they start showing you how he works with computers and like how he like tinkers with them and scans for things and just kind of looks for things that are out there, and then finds this magazine about this game that like these games that are coming out by this company, and he wants to try to get to it before they're available. And I love how that just sets the movie on this collision course for these two things coming together.
Yeah.
And that's really your setup, right? It's like this party, he's going to start poking around the internet, and that's how it's going to collide. And I thought that was really cool.
And just like creating a program that's just going to be, it's the first telemarketer.
Yeah.
He's just going to cold call everybody.
Yep.
Everyone in that area code to hope that he gets the office.
Yeah. Well, and even think about, like, it's funny. We take for granted the search engine, and you brought it up before, like, having to, like, know a web address, right? But, like, he guessed at a command. He was like list game. Well, obviously he ran like help or man, like for like something info, but like list games to see like what, and because that's what he was after was games. So he just tried that and it worked. And I love like he was like these games, like it was like boring. It was like chess, blah blah blah, and it was like the one that called thermonuclear war. Was it like total thermonuclear war? It was like, wasn't it like something ridiculous?
Yeah, I think it was global
thermonuclear war.
I guess maybe this is the phase where I have to ask, and maybe we'll have to periodically visit this as we're going here. Obviously, you have the benefit of you're doing this now, 40 years later. There was a handful of times throughout the course of this movie where I was like, come on, even for then, there's no way their programmers were that fucking stupid. You know what I mean? And I'm willing to suspend the disbelief that they didn't, like, start from scratch with the machine code and, like, build a new machine. They're like, oh, well, you have this machine that works. We'll just program it with the things we want and do that with it, right? I'm willing to suspend my belief on that.
Okay.
But the whole thing was that it was supposed to be this like strategic command, like let's call it like assistant, right? Like it's going to be the thing that runs all of these things. But the government has, even back then and still now, they have closed networks for these things. Why was this connected to the phone line of the world? Like it should have been only connected to the phone line of the base. Like, he should have never been able to dial into it to access those, like, below the line runtimes, you know?
I think they, I don't know if they actually said it explicitly, but I feel like the reason why he was able to do that was they kept harping on the idea that they could be millions of miles away and call in what they need to call, like, actually execute what they need to execute, and to do that you would need some sort of more like global communication.
Sure, but like then and even still now, like things of like that level of like classified like are not publicly accessible. Like you, even if you have like login credentials, you can't do it from home. Like you have to, like they're closed networks that only exist on that base, or even they like for something like this, they would have just created dedicated phone lines that only went between base and base.
Sure.
Like it wouldn't have been like, well, I couldn't just dial up NORAD on my phone. You know what I mean?
I think you might be able to, if you want to find an excuse for, for allowing it, there wasn't another thing like it. So like, they were building, they built it out and they built it on the infrastructure that exists, like as an experiment. I could see that being a reason, like a plausible reason for, just allowing it to be accessible. And then ultimately, like, it would be like, you can't get in. They didn't know about the backdoor, which is one thing. Backdoors are definitely a thing.
No, of course.
They didn't know about it.
I'm totally okay with the backdoor thing. I've read, Dan Brown had a book about cryptography with the NSA, and they talk about backdoors a lot in that. And it's like that's a thing I'm totally okay with. And like I said, I require some suspension of disbelief, but like the whole idea of, oh, he made this great computer, we'll just use that one, versus we're going to take the coding that he did and just make a new one to start from scratch.
Yeah, I got you.
Just so like we could eliminate the fluff. Like I'm willing to let that one go because like that works for the movie. But like to me, knowing what I know about like military and intelligence, like security, it's like they would never be able to just dial into their fucking computer. Like you would only be able to access it on base, or like I said, like there would have been a private network just among the NORAD bases, which like every military base is not connected to NORAD. It was only specific ones during the Cold War that like there was specifically like the president, the head of like NORAD Air Command, and each of the bases that had nuclear missiles and nuclear deterrent stuff. Like, it was not just random like base X could just dial into NORAD's phone line. Like that's not a thing.
Yeah. No, of course,
you don't get to have the movie with that, but it's just like it was one of those things where I was like, "Oh, come on!"
Yeah. I got you. And I would say like for the time, I can hand wave it away. If you were to do it today, I'd be like, you need to come up with a much better explanation of how we can connect to the thing. I agree with that, but for the time, I'm okay with just being like, nah. Especially since like if you think about the time, nobody is questioning it. Nobody like watching the movie at that time. Like no movie viewer is questioning it. I don't think.
Maybe not. I think the average person, like the person who was us in the 90s, but in the 80s, like who was like, I've heard of computers. We don't own one. We're like, why would you own such a thing? There's nothing important. Like they still like people then understood how phone lines work. Like in a way that like if you ask like a 15-year-old now, like how do phones work? Like they would have no concept of what hardline phones. But like people, a 15-year-old then, him or even her, like who doesn't know anything about computers in the movie, right? Would have understood more or less how phones worked at that time.
Yeah.
Like, I think I would have assumed someone watching the movie would be like, you can't just call the White House and get the Oval Office. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just
call the White House.
You can't just call NORAD and be like, General, whatever. Like, hey, what's going on? Is your refrigerator running? Like, you couldn't do that back then. Like, you couldn't prank call the head of NORAD.
Ridiculous. Well, getting back to the music, messing around with the computer though, and like, so when he's demoing for, I actually don't remember any of the character names. So
no, neither do I.
When David is demoing for Jennifer, like how his like computer setup works, and I love they connect, like he's able to change the grade in the system, and then they connect to the airline, and they book a ticket. I thought that was really funny. That Chekhov's ticket plays a role.
I was genuinely surprised when they asked me.
I was like, "Good on you!"
Booked a ticket to this. I was like, "Oh shit! That wasn't just a throwaway line. That's awesome."
Yeah, that was really cool. And then they're playing through. I love the idea that they're sitting there playing this game, and they're like, "Let's drop bombs on Las Vegas," and people in the military base are like, "What's going on?
Oh god, missiles incoming to Seattle!"
It's like it is really comical when you look at it that way. But it's like, and then also like it's the kind of the commentary on like how dangerous it actually could be or is with the.
Well, it's all of it. It showed like the idea even back then of like children playing with violent video games. Like the bloodlust of kids like Seattle gone. Like this city gone. We don't need them. Bomb them too. Like, haha, we're playing a video game. It's great. And then, like, what the implications of those are. Like, oh my god, the 2 million people that live in Seattle are all gonna die instantly. Like, the world is ending. Like, scramble our fighters and start lobbing fucking nukes at Russia. And someone else being like, something seems off here. Maybe we shouldn't just start lobbing nukes because, like, we can't account for it exactly.
Mm-hmm. I love that he goes to see his hacker friends, and they're like, "It's probably a government system," and he's like, "Ah!" I'm gonna find these games. But even better, I love when he played the game, and then they just like abandoned it, and went about the rest of their day, and he's just sitting there, and he's listening. The news is on, and he's like, "Nobody else knows this. Was that me?"
Going back to the whole Beavis and Butthead thing, like I think he's talking to you.
Yes, that was really good.
Global thermonuclear war.
Nah,
that can't have nothing to do with. Oh, global thermonuclear war.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the stupid joke in the Family Guy, the Blue Harvest one, where they're making fun of the first Star Wars. Obi-Wan Kenobi. I wonder if he means old Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's so ridiculous. So they pick him up, and he's terrified, obviously, because like these government agents have picked him up. And
wait, no, we cannot hand wave that scene. It's so fucking ridiculous. I was dying laughing when like he's just
so
like,
many people
walking to the street, and it is immediately obvious there's 30 people staring at him, and like it wasn't just like, oh, maybe I'm just second guessing myself. Like as I'm walking through this crowd of people, there's that one guy who seems like he's no. There's some dude who just follows him directly across the street, and it's like, dude, you are getting arrested right now or kidnapped. Sure, maybe it wasn't the government. The point is, there's 30 of them. You're not escaping.
Oh man! I just love it's really funny, like the concept of him being like telling the truth exactly as is, and they're like, can't be.
Kid, stop fucking wasting our time.
Yeah, get out of here with your fake cover. I swear to God.
I hacked your system.
I'm not that smart. You're that dumb. Like that's what he is basically saying.
Well,
right?
there's that too, but like he's literally like, I accidentally hacked your system, and that's what's happening. It's like,
I did an oopsie.
Who are you working for?
Yeah.
No, seriously, I was trying to play games, and this is just the stupidest, craziest mistake of all time. So you're a Russian
want to play it like that? Yeah.
It's like, sir, I am 16 years old.
Yep. But then we get a lot of other cool things. So like, I like that we don't just stop with him being, curious and smart about like how like the mechanics of like a computer of the time, or like even electronics of the time. Because when he does he escapes
from a locked room.
The recording of a touch tone lock device. I think that was really clever. Like, and like playing the tone back for the keys that actually unlock it. Like, that was great. I loved that.
Again, and like I know that things were not as like progressive at the time, but like there's no reason this guy couldn't have been getting A's in math and science, and like someone maybe quietly say, we're gonna find you a program where you'll be really good at those things, right? Like we're be like, oh, you're not great at these things, you're not super interested in them. We'd like you to spend a little bit of time, but you're a savant in math and sciences. Mm-hmm. We will send you to a special school for maths and sciences. You become someone who is brilliant in those things. There are a million things you can do and live a totally normal-ish life. Like,
yeah.
Like.
Well, no, you're that's too much through the lens of today, though. At that time, those things are not really questioned. It's like, no, you like knock it off and go to school. Like that's what
Sure, but my point is like he wasn't even applying himself in math and sciences. Was my point. You know what I mean?
I got you. Aside from like the touchstone thing, when he escapes and he does the thing with the payphone, I loved that too. Like just like they pulled on all of these really cool things. I remember my buddy had that like there was a tone that you could play through, like you hold up to the bottom of a hardwired payphone that would trick it to think it would mock the dial tone, which would trick it to like allow you to make a call.
Okay.
And we messed around with it once and we got it to work. Like it was fun. It was just fairly silly. But so like that was really fun to watch happen in the movie. Like that was like this friend of mine was also like me, liked to tinker with a computer, and he like told me about this thing, and we played around with it, and we figured out how to get it to work, and it was like real. Like, I mean, we spent like an hour trying to make a phone call from the ice skating rink, and we did. But it was really cool when we got it to work. Like it was just, I think they definitely nailed the nostalgia, pulling on some things that like really hit close to home. But that was cool. This movie has like. A lot of locations. Right? Like they kind of all over the place between wherever that base is in the opening to wherever he lives, and then like NORAD, and then Goose Island, and it's just like it's all over the place, but it somehow works. It's just movies of that time were just so different.
Yeah, no, I mean we've talked about the idea of like shooting stuff, and I understand it can cost money to shoot on location, and to be fair, most of this was shot in like suburban or rural areas, so certainly cheaper to shoot there than like this movie's taking place inside of Washington D.C. or New York City or Paris or whatever. Like, I understand it's expensive to shoot in like urban locations and all of that, but like there's something to be said for authenticity. There's a lot of movies that take place in L.A. that were shot clearly in Atlanta. Like it's
But yeah, like that's. I was thinking about it. It's like when we have all these locations that we go to and we shoot at and whatever, and then the scene where they finally they find where Falcon is and they go to see him. He's flying a robot pterodactyl.
Yes,
and I'm like, what in the hell is going on? Like, that was the point. And then to follow it up with like his explanation of like the dinosaurs in extinction and how like his like nihilistic view of everything and how basically we should just let this happen.
I had a moment in there. This is like almost a non sequitur. When I was watching that scene, for a moment, I was like, from my earliest concept, the first movie my parents, and I don't remember, I know we've talked about this show before. My parents took me to see Jurassic Park. I was like 3 years old.
Yeah.
But I remember watching that movie at home. I loved that movie from when I was like 5 years old. Like memories of enjoying the movie from when I was like 5 years old. In my mind, we always knew about dinosaurs because I always knew about dinosaurs. We didn't actually know, like, as like a society about dinosaurs, like for like that long. Like I don't even think it's 100 years. It's like I think it's less than that. So it's like we all like knew and more or less accepted that dinosaurs existed, and like I had representations of them. Like I think like there were bones found maybe like 100 years ago, and like they didn't know what they were, and like it's more like 70 years or something like that, or 50 years, something somewhere in that range of like actually knowing and like having like recreated like skeletons of dinosaurs and shit like that. So for a moment I was like, oh shit, they knew about dinosaurs like that far back? Like it like had like recreations that look a lot like the Jurassic Park dinosaurs, even though this movie came out like 10 years before Jurassic Park. It's like not that long on the timeline where it's like it's not that much further before the movie where they're like we're still debating whether like what exactly dinosaurs were.
I had to look up like when 1841 Richard Owens coins the word dinosaur. Obviously not not commonly accepted knowledge or understanding. So like it's much further after that where it's So I understand. I totally get what you're saying.
Like they were finding bones, but like they didn't know what they were.
It wasn't until 1824 that William Buckland, Oxford University's first professor of geology, described and named the first known dinosaur based on a lower jaw vertebrae and limb bones found in the local quarries.
You said that was 1924?
1824.
1824, okay.
But even so, consider that being the first time it's considered, and then like let's progress 100 years of exploration, understanding, and thinking and digging. Now 1924. Now the difference between that and this movie, it's the materials too.
Where I was like, like they really had like not just like we know dinosaurs like existed or whatever, but like we had recreations even. Like I didn't know how much longer before Jurassic Park they had like visualizations of like what a dinosaur would look like. You know what I mean? Like to know that they existed versus like this is what a dinosaur would potentially look like. I wasn't entirely sure. I had a moment where I was like, I knew it was within that time frame, but to me it was still felt like it was like, like they must have not had them for like that long, like what like an artist representation of what a dinosaur would be type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm like trying to find like a way to phrase this. I'd love to know like the first like educational piece of it, like publicly educational informational piece of dinosaur. Like when was that?
If you could find a way to get that out of a search engine, like that would be interesting to like compare and contrast against what like I'm trying to say here. Like I know I'm doing a poor job of it, but I think
you're not. I totally follow what you're saying.
I was saying it sounds like you are tracking.
I'm now just more curious too of like what is the timeline of that. But yeah, so and like it was really just a way for him to explain. It was really just a set piece for extinction, so that he could be like, we should just let this happen.
There was a lot of foreshadowing and allegory and symbolism in this movie for sure.
I just loved that, like these two kids who are the only people taking this seriously at this point.
I have to tell them, is that okay for billions of people to be exterminated?
Yeah, or like they figure out, okay, our best bet is to go to the guy that knows about this machine because he knows that Joshua is programmed into the machine and tell him, yo, this terrible thing is going on. And then for him to be like, yeah, we should let that happen. And then like the looks on their faces of, what the fuck? What? Really? I just came all the way here.
And I have to tell him, like, okay, like, you can be personally nihilistic and, like, you have a reason to be depressed. Yeah. And, like, if you want to die, I suppose that's your choice. Yeah. Versus, we're telling you that billions of people are going to die, and you're like, yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah.
And we have to get you to a point of, like, no, that's not okay, actually.
I feel like they largely... like the Jennifer character is like largely like I feel like it's just there as like almost just like a romantic interest for the lead, which that's another weird like symptom of like 80s 90s movies is like there has to be a romance.
Yeah,
like it has to. It's like it's part of the checklist. But she ultimately has the line, kind of what you're saying. It's like, I'm a kid that hasn't lived my life yet, and like that is what like kind of appeals to Falcon, and like all of this is done silently makes him think about his son and ultimately change his mind and then want to help him, and he does so by chasing them down with a helicopter, which was just such a bizarre scene.
Truly. Like, I would love to know where he got that helicopter. Did he pull it out of his ass? Like, right. No, I understand he made a call and the person showed up.
If only he flew in on a pterodactyl.
Now I'm picturing like that he had hidden away some like personalized helicopter that I'm thinking of, because I had just on in the background the other day some random episode of Family Guy, and I've always loved where like once every like 8 years they do one of these stupid things where like he's got Peter Copter or the Hinden Peter, you know, and there was one, you know, because I think those were both in the same episode, but the
to the Peter Copter,
yeah, there was one where it was the Peter Ring. Okay. He jumps in this gigantic, like Jetsons looking boomerang that flings him. He goes off screen, and then of course he comes flying back, crashes into the house.
It's so stupid.
And I'm just picturing now, like him having his own helicopter that they were not aware of, but it's like a pterodactyl wings. Absolutely, like just for purely aesthetic reasons, you know, not for flying. It's a thopter. No, not even a thopter. The wings are not useful other than to make it look like a pterodactyl.
Oh man!
Or maybe it would have been like a biplane, or not a biplane, like one of those like water like the amphibious planes, like Indiana Jones when he's escaping in Raiders, you know, but with pterodactyl like accoutrement to make it look like the wings and hands like come out of the wings.
Amazing. All right, so he picks him up in his pterodactyl. They bring him back to NORAD. NORAD? Is that where they are? What was their base? Is that what their base was?
In Colorado.
I love that they just make it through the comically slow-moving door.
All of it. The whole that scene was ridiculous. I was like,
the Jeep run, which follows on the heels of the helicopter chase.
I was like,
which is just incredible.
I was like, this Jeep driver's a fucking badass. As he's fucking whipping hairpin turns without toppling that thing, and like, just fucking drives it through the fence, crashes. Is like, go on without me, it's fine.
Which like. For him to be driving with that urgency, they must have convinced him that they needed to get there.
Considering no one took him seriously except for that one guy and the secretary who wouldn't let them close the door.
Right.
The only two people who took him seriously.
Yeah. Oh my god. It's so ridiculous. And I got a chuckle out of the idea that if they just missed that door, that the world ends.
Well, yeah, considering he was able to cold call the computer running the entire strategic air defense,
right?
That they couldn't make a call inside of this vault, because they closed the door.
Yeah.
Again, this was like that was part of the reason why I was having an issue with this.
Forgive me if I might be just making this up at right now, but did they, when they realized that it was connected to from outside, didn't they prevent you from reconnecting? They realized that. I thought
from reconnecting to what?
From like reconnecting to the outside. I thought they cut off its communication to the outside once they realized that it was communicating with somebody on the outside.
No, because the whole thing was like they tracked the communication to him, but they didn't realize that the computer itself was continuing to like have its own runtime beyond what they were asking it to do on its own thing. Because that's the whole point, is they didn't even realize that it was trying to do some of these things.
Oh, but it was doing all of that internally, though.
Some of it, but remember, it still had to reach out externally to the missiles. The missiles weren't just on that base; those missiles were all across the country.
Yes, but I thought it was something about like the public. I might be getting this. Honestly, I might be getting this mixed up with something else like Armada. Like I vaguely I remember something about like finding out that it was connecting to something public that needed to be shut down. But I could be thinking of something entirely. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I mean, I know at one point
it does matter in the fact that he probably could have reconnected to it and done something.
Well, no, because at some point they were trying to shut it down locally, and it was just like rejecting their ability to access like the commands.
Yeah, it locks them out.
Yeah,
it locks them out of everything.
Yeah, and also at some point they realized that it's trying to get those codes. Yes. They could not find a way to block the codes. They just were like, okay, it's not going to be an issue if we don't go to DEFCON 5. Or DEFCON 1, whatever. But then they immediately do all of the things that push them to DEFCON 1. Like, at some point someone says, oh, well, it won't matter if someone has the codes as long as we're not at DEFCON 1. And then they immediately move it, like, to DEFCON 4 and 3 and 2. And it's like, my guy, you said the two things. You just need one little thing to connect the two things. Yeah. Because, like, obviously, they're not taking seriously that the computer is "quote unquote" thinking for itself.
Not until it's at that last stage.
Not until it's at the
which is then stage. When it locks them out and starts cycling the codes.
Well, it does the final lock, and it's earnestly trying to decrypt it, right? Yeah. But like there was an element of like
what an edge of the seat moment though, right? Like of it, like the show, like quick cutting to the flipper of the numbers as it's locking digits in of like this ridiculously long, like. Really well done.
Which, I mean, I guess this was before they had those lockout things where it's like, now when you try and you log into something, if you try more than like 5 times and you can't, lock you out or whatever. I was always confused. I've read a bunch of different things, including like, again, actually that Dan Brown book I was talking about earlier, Digital Fortress, and other things as well, read, watched, whatever, different cryptography things. I was always confused how even brute force like worked in like how it's depicted in movies. So maybe that's not the accurate one. Brute force, right? You try every single possible permutation of whatever the character set that you're using, right? Whether it's numbers or alphanumeric, whatever it is. But I always assumed that in order to, in any functional way, do that, right? You're literally saying it's this combination of things, and then you change one. It's this. But there's so many of those things, including this one, where like they show them hacking, they're going through every possible thing, and it's like, oh, they found a letter.
Yeah.
But most, or a number, whatever. Most password things won't tell you, oh, you got one of the 12 characters right. You either got 12 characters right, or you got it wrong.
Absolutely, yeah. It will not.
But like, there's a million movies in the 80s and 90s that did this thing, and I've always been confused by that. I'm pretty sure it's not real, but it was always weird to me that so many things did this that I was like, am I misunderstanding something? Like, how would you know?
You know what it is?
Unless back then certain things worked the way that like a key does. Like if you're trying to like pick a lock of a key, right? You have to say there's 3 tumblers in the lock. If you get the first tumbler to activate, you can then move to the second tumbler. Like, did things like this physically work like that?
I don't think so, and because it would be a waste of time to build something that way, because then if you think about like the
security doesn't matter. You're not worried about a password. You're worried about 10 individual single digit,
which have like a hard limit and can be cracked by hand. Like, yes. It wouldn't be. But I think a
5-year-old can brute force that. Let alone
I'm fairly sure
computer.
It's just a movie trope, and I think it's for the effect of showing how close you are to the end, right? Like another way of doing it is
it's a counter
like
clock.
there's this number of combinations to try, and like they could show you that number like rapidly going down, but that also doesn't show progress because you don't know at what point they'll hit the digit. So like by doing it this way, it helps you like kind of like it builds the tension, helps you realize, oh my god, there's one digit left. Like
it's like theoretically, it's like, oh, there's 290 million permutations, but you might get it on the third try.
Yeah, you might guess it the first time.
Yeah,
that would have sucked, huh?
Everyone's played Wordle, and you just randomly guess a word and got it on the first try. Yeah. It's not because you knew the
thermonuclear war.
It's not because you hacked it. It's just because you got really lucky on that one guess of the however many millions of permutation. Yeah, so I always assumed that was a contrivance, but there's been so many movies and shows that have used that trope that I'm like, am I missing something?
Yeah, I don't think so. That's funny. But so it's churning through it. I love the idea that like the Chekhov's tic-tac-toe. Mm-hmm. They brought that up at Falcon's house, and Jennifer's like, I don't play it anymore because there's no point in playing it. You don't win that game. It's just a tie all the time. And then leveraging that to have the computer play itself in tic-tac-toe so that it can learn about the concept of a tie. Well, even in that though, like there was something in like when they first try it, it's like, oh, you have to beat it at tic-tac-toe. And it's like, no, it wasn't about, because like they get mad. They're gonna like scrap it after trying it, and it's like, or they're gonna scrap it after like the first time they try and like get past its lock, and it's like it won't let them or whatever. And it's like, okay, we're gonna get through it, and like someone else is like trying to like, okay, good job, kid, whatever, get out of the way, we're gonna take. It's like, no, he's the one who understands what's going on. Like I understand you don't want to take him seriously, but nothing you've done has worked. This is the first time you have a glimpse of something that's working. Shut the fuck up and get out of the way. And let him do. Like he's made 1% progress as opposed to your 0% progress. Let's follow the 1%. Let's let his 1% see if it can become 5% progress. Right.
And like it almost is like, oh well, you have to try and beat him at tic-tac-toe, and then watching like it's like no, like you're kind of getting it, but like how long does it take to learn? Right? Like how long is it? Like how many times you have to run it? And it's not even the transition from you're playing it at tic-tac-toe versus it's got to like play itself. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of a really cool way to show what the whole concept they were explaining.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then I like showing it on the tic-tac-toe board, playing all these games against itself, and then ultimately then showing that in the thermonuclear war game of like it was every like boom 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 nope boom 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 nope boom 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 no oh if we play this game it's mutually assured destruction.
And it was cool too. I don't remember the specific history, but I'm guessing if you look, those were real plans. Probably some of those were probably real plans. Like it showed like try this. It was like the whatever plan. Like if you strike here and here and here, could you win by trying those? Nope. We still all die. Okay, and like going to the next one, we're like, well, what if, and it reminded me actually of like chess, right? Where you have those different like strategies and like moves and like, could you try like this gambit to try and trap someone in chess or try this offensive? Like, there's all these different names for those like strategies and like games that these like grandmasters have come up with, and like every other like different sort of game that you could try, or like where you think of these different like scenarios and these different like ploys that you can in the game that like are popularized by someone that they named these things for strategic first strike candidacies in global thermonuclear war.
Yeah. What a fun movie.
And just watching that like run it 50 times where it's like and you see like all of the things go explosion.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, start again. Explosion.
Yeah. I love how like they're all so pumped when it's over, and I'm like, oh, like we didn't kill ourselves. Like that was like the
pop the champagne.
Yeah, and it was like, guys, if you just like listen to this kid from the beginning. Oh my goodness!
But also now Russia may think that we're attacking them. And we have to worry about that at the end. Like, talk about like a false scenario, like where it's like, hey, everything's fine now, guys.
I love the idea. Well, You want a suspension of disbelief? At the end of the day, it's all running off the Whopper.
Yeah.
Right? Just unplug it.
I was a little confused by that as well, too, because they were like the guy who was like the annoying exposition like nerd who like was technically in charge of the computer. Yeah. Like he was like, we're trying everything we can. And it was like, I also had that thought where I was like can they not just unplug it? And then at some point
in the 1980s, I'm pretty sure a cup of water could have got the job done.
Maybe. But also the thing is, you have to remember, like in those times when they would develop those systems, like before they would even bring some of those things online, they would spend like a year designing every possible failsafe because it's like, once we turn this on, we don't ever want to be envisioning a world in which this thing is not in charge. And so if someone turns a microwave on in the break room, we have to make sure that's not going to kill it. If someone accidentally trips with a cup of water, we have to make sure that's not going to kill it. If someone accidentally trips and knocks the plug out from it, so like they would have like fail safes with battery backups, like that's the type of which to be fair, we've carried those things on now. It's just like they're a little bit, in some ways, a little bit more refined and like specific in some ways, or cleaner, I'll say. But like that's probably what happened, right? They probably didn't say it, but they probably did unplug the computer, but it's got 36 hours of battery backup or some shit like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't access the batteries. They're underneath so that no one can sabotage. You know what I mean? Like, it's like...
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even a throwaway line that even not super plausible, but like just to acknowledge that I think would have been helpful. But I honestly, I don't really care. It's fine. I just thought about it now. It really is a funny concept of like, oh, it's going to launch missiles. Turn it off.
Yeah.
End of movie.
Or you start to think, and maybe actually this more comes down to like them not taking the threat seriously until it was too late. But like there was almost an element of, okay, fine. Maybe because of these fail-safes, like we couldn't cut off like the hard line of the communication from this to it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe on the other end, like where the missiles are, could we sever their connection to the phone line to this? Although actually, no, they actually did say one thing about this sort of failsafe, right? Didn't they say something about, I don't remember what the prompt question was, but they basically said, no, if we do that, the system will act as if it was destroyed and it launches because it was saying it got attacked by a first strike. They did say
that.
So like that was why they couldn't do it.
Actually. And that is why it matters that it's the Whopper, because that's the thing that has
it
that
was
like
the
logic. Yeah. Okay. You're right.
It was like they were like, well, why can't we whatever? And it was like, no, because if it stops getting communication,
it's going to assume that NORAD was hit.
Destroyed. And so the failsafe is NORAD's been destroyed. Launch everything as a final
fires and missiles.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay, take a nap and then fires.
Cool. They did talk about it. Yeah. I take it back. Good on you, WarGames.
That took me a minute to remember as well, but yeah.
What a fun! I'm just so glad that I just like saw that on there and threw it on and just had a great time with it. And it seems like you enjoyed it as well.
It was a good experience. I was glad I finally got to sit down and watch it. I've definitely seen and heard of references to that. Some of them I was aware of because it was pointed out to me, and some of them that I was not aware of, that like retroactively it'll be cool to kind of piece all that together. I just had something else I was thinking of within this that I'm forgetting now, but there was something I was just thinking of a few minutes ago, but it doesn't matter. Either way, it was interesting. I was glad to actually sit down and watch it. It was a good, interesting watch.
Yeah. Well, that's all for this week's episode of Flix in the Six. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you have a movie for us to review or nuggets for us to discuss, you can send those requests to flixinthesix@thespintune.com. Tune in next week for more movie and beer goodness. Until we will be taking next week off, as I will be in Austin on business.
Oh, okay. News to me.
Tune in 2-ish weeks. Until then, I'm Anthony Costanzo.
I'm Biolsi.
Thanks for coming out.